We're doing it. We're doing it. We're here. We made it. We made it. Streaming in the real world. Off we go. Having a good one. It'd be helpful if I actually got my mic into the game. Not gonna lie to you guys. I'm gonna tell you right off the bat. My dog woke me up in the morning way too early. Of course I was right about Starfield. People need to start just acknowledging, dude. I'm a genius. I know what I'm talking about. Right? Everybody needs to start listening to me. Right? That's the reason I do this. Right? Because I know that I'm right. Just today, for fun, about Starfield, I decided to go take a look at a little bit more information and go take a look at some videos. It looks empty. That's all. Like, it looks like they made, like, a pretty edifice. Like, it looks like they made, like, a painting, right? Something that if you wanted to walk around and look at stuff, like, if that's what you're in for, if you want to, like... an inside, like if all you want to do is load up like an immersive like walking tour, right? I think a game like Starfield, like an experience like Starfield, but I mean it doesn't look like it's a game, right? It doesn't actually look like it's a game. Well, Eric says One Piece live action is absolutely amazing, fantastic, but is it a movie? Yeah, Bethesda and half-assed products name a more iconic duo. Yeah. I don't know who Sean Fain is, but how dare you, sir? How dare you? How dare you choose anyone other than the Canadian commie? I don't mind grinning. I'm just messing with you. Is it a movie, Eric? Is it a movie? I'm glad you guys are here today. Today is going to be a real climate change heavy... a real climate change heavy episode, I guess, stream. What are we calling these things? I don't even know what to call them. And I am also very tired because my dog decided to wake me up super early because he's super excited to be home. That's pretty obvious. Hey, Radio, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. I mean, we might as well start with the absolute stupid stuff like Joe Biden. Climate change is real, by the way. Fossil fuel subsidies hit $7 trillion last year. You can see that they've just steadily been rising, right? We had a little moment there in 2019, 2020 where there was like a tiny little dip down where it just went, dip down, and then right back up and up again, right? The red is explicit subsidies. So straight up, just here, fossil fuel industry. Here is $1 billion for being the fossil fuel industry. And then the blue is the implicit subsidies. So things like the carbon tax would be a subsidy for the fossil fuel industry, right? This is the source of this information, of course, is the International Monetary Fund. So we are literally funding the destruction of the species. It's super cool how we are all on board. You can see pretty straightforwardly, Exxon says world set to fail 2-degree global warming cap by 2050. And then from NPR, Exxon lobbyist caught on video talking about undermining Biden's climate push, which of course is leading us to a little bit of good news, something I've been saying all along. A group of BC towns wants to sue Big Oil for the climate crisis. That, my opinion, steadily more and more has become that until these people are in jail, not being fined, not actually being fined. Demand better. Good to see you, my man. You too. That until these people are actually in jail, not having a fine levied, not in negotiations, not even going to trial, that until they are literally in prison for their obvious, overt, insane crimes against humanity and against the rest of us, until they are in jail, we should not tolerate any politicians saying that they give two shits about climate change at all. That needs to become our position as a people, and it needs to be that way, because these people are psychopaths, very, very clearly, in a black and white kind of a way. These people are psychopaths, that they have completely lost the ability to have credibility within the conversation, that it is very clear that they are sacrificing even their own children and the future of the species for dollars on a screen. That's it. That any conversation surrounding, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't act like total psychopaths, just gets completely removed from the conversation completely. And until their assets are seized, they are in prison, those are the conditions by which we should be saying this out loud all of the time. And the people who kind of scoff and say, oh, well, you're being so, those people, like, they're essentially Nazi sympathizers at this stage in the game. And it's not hyperbolic or hysterical to say so. Like, climate change is a serious thing that is going to, and is already having serious consequences in the world. And nobody wants to actually stand up and tell the truth about the reality of what's going to happen with climate change. No one wants to actually face the hard, cold reality of what it's going to mean to continue burning fossil fuels and to continue poisoning our atmosphere in this way. That I actually think that the climate change movement has done itself a major disservice by focusing on water levels going up. Focusing on this idea that all of the water levels are going to go up, right? This is something like, literally, we've got movies like Waterworld. We've got all of this going on where we're all focused on the idea that the water levels are going to come up. And that's part of it, right? That's part of it. But the hard truth is that if you raise the temperature, the heat is going to go up. That we are going to suffocate on the air. That we are going to burn the place down. Crow Guy asks, isn't Ashoka the Indian scholar? Correct. Yeah. I don't think the Star Wars people give a shit about that. Since when do Westerners care about Indian scholars? Eric asking the important questions. What do you think about the latest developments of the Jordan Peterson trial? I actually have. It's gotten pathetic at this point. Like, the people who are actually defending, like this Sean Watley guy and the National Post should be ashamed of themselves about how pathetic this is. Like we're facing like a serious climate crisis. We're facing things that are actually quite serious. And instead of actually discussing those things, we're talking about this guy. Right? And like this guy, like, Peterson's become like the biggest loser in Canada, period. And the people who support him and defend him are enormous losers. Like, enormous losers. Like, here's the narrative, right? Here's what's going on with Peterson, is that on Twitter, he told people to go kill themselves. He was putting up like literal cock milking porn and saying that this is what's going on in China. This cock milking porn that I'm putting up this is what's going on in China. I'm a serious, credible academic. You should definitely come and listen to me. He was outing people. He literally would put up documents. At one point, he put up a document of the people who had complained about his actions, but he put them up unredacted, which is so very clearly and obviously a way for a person to tell his fan base, hey, if you want to go harass someone, here's their address. This is a thing. This is a thing that he's actually done, right? And so people complained, rightfully. People are right to complain to the regulatory body that regulates psychologists in Ontario. So to be a psychologist in Ontario, you have to adhere to a code of conduct set by the Council of Ontarian Psychologists, or it's the Council of Psychologists of Ontario, right? Lots of ofs in the title, but that's what it is. That to be an adult and to be a professional, like all of this conversation about free speech is great if you're a little kid, right? Like if you're a little kid and you don't really have a job and you're not actually a professional and you don't actually know anything, then you can buy into this idea that I'm allowed to say the N-word and good speech beats bad speech. That's great if you're like a little kid or a nightclub comedian, okay? But if you want to be an adult, if you want to be in a profession, if you want a professional group of professionals to actually say, yeah, this guy's okay, like this guy's fine, you can go into a room by yourself with this guy, and this guy can listen to your problems and give you life advice, and we accredit this guy. We give this guy a thumbs up. That's a fine way to be, right? If you're going to do that, then that professional organization is going to ask you to adhere to a code of conduct. And if you refuse to adhere to a code of conduct, then you don't need to be an accredited psychologist. Very, very straightforwardly. If your desire to tell people to go kill themselves and to send cock milking porn around and to out people and to send addresses to your fan base so that they can harass people, if that's what you want to do, then you don't need to be a psychologist. Really straightforward. And if you think this is a free speech issue, then you're a child. Then you're a little kid who doesn't want to grow up and doesn't want to understand that to be considered a professional, right, that people need to be vetted. To be considered a professional, there are organizations, and those organizations absolutely have the right to ask you to adhere to a code of conduct. And if you think otherwise, then you're an embarrassing child, like Sean Watley, like the National Post. These embarrassing children who have billions of dollars to spread around this nonsense and act in a disingenuous way. So it's gotten really embarrassing. And what's the most embarrassing part about all of this is that the consequences of this for Jordan Peterson is literally like go to a seminar. Literally sit down, listen to somebody do a lecture. You know those like corporate videos we've all gone through, right? Every single one of us has sat down in a room and had a person be like, this is money. Here at Walmart, we believe in consistency in our counting, right? Mikhail, good to see you, my man. I don't know if I said hello, Crow Guy. Good to see you, man. Like, we've literally all done this. It's very straightforward, and it's a very easy thing to do. So this whole conversation is the absolute pinnacle and the absolute height of white privilege. Because the consequence, it's not like he's going to go to jail, right? It's not like the state is coming and they're going to put me in prison and I'm, oh my God, this is fascism on the Fed. It's literally the organization that regulates his industry, right? His profession, telling him, yeah, dude, you are in violation of our code of conduct, without a doubt. So your choice is to take this literal one-day seminar to sign a little piece of paper to say that you understand what our code of conduct is and how to act on places like Twitter, right? Or you can stop being a psychologist. And instead of going, oh, yeah, I guess I did tell people to kill themselves, and, I did send around that cock-milking porn video. I definitely did that. Oopsie-doo. Right? Instead of showing that he actually is capable of acknowledging when he makes a mistake, and instead of actually showing that he's capable of being a grown adult and a grown person and setting a good example for his own followers and his own listeners, instead of saying, like, okay, I was mad, I was angry, perhaps I was overtired, perhaps I was stressed out, maybe I do need to do some self-reflection, maybe I should go get some therapy myself, maybe I should sit in one of these psychology things and actually talk to somebody and actually take seriously, like, why did I send that video of cock-milking porn around? Like, even if it was a Chinese thing, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I fucking doing? Why did I tell that guy to go kill himself? Like, that's absolutely brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Like, instead of doing that, he's like doubling down, wasting everybody's time, going to court, and then fucking literally the National Post is publishing this shit. Like, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing for Canada. This is embarrassing for the capitalist class. This is embarrassing for Canada. This is embarrassing for everyone involved in it. Most of all, Peterson. Actually, most of all, the people who defend Peterson. That's the most embarrassing thing. We got a fellow on Twitch saying, in 8 hogs, you look like a communist. That's because I am a communist, my man. The name is the Canadian Commie. I've got a little flag with the sigil there. And the beard is the next level, right? I've even got a communist flag right there. So I am a communist. If you'd like to ask any questions and not just regurgitate CIA propaganda, please go ahead. So that's the Peterson story. It's extremely embarrassing. It is the very definition of white privilege at its peak. You can't get much more peak than this. Like, oh no, consequences for my shitty behavior, and it's like the mildest thing ever. I'm gonna put up the biggest possible fuss that I can. Like, he's a child, right? This is the person who's telling us to like buck up, right? Isn't white privilege racist? I love it. Reverse racism, right, bud? Because the people who set up the system, if you call out the existence of the system by the people who set up and benefit from the system, you're the racist one, right? Come on. It's grow up time, my man. It's grow up time. The part that I love, JP argues that he's being persecuted for his views on Trudeau. Yeah, right. Like, this is the thing, is that Peterson doesn't have any cards left to play. Right? He's no longer really viewed credibly by in the mainstream anymore. He's actively sold himself to the far right. Like, he works for the Daily Wire now. Like, he's straight up, his stated reason for going to go work for the Daily Wire is money. Like, that's it, just money. So the people who are walking around thinking this guy still has credibility, like they just it's that same kind of like my dad said so sort of energy. That's all. It's just my dad said so. That's it. And it's I mean, I get it. Like, people don't really want to grow up. They want to live in sort of this world of childish imagination. If white people did run the system, wouldn't they brutally silence any sort of criticism of their power? Yeah, like they assassinated Martin Luther King. They assassinated Malcolm X. Like, they do, my man. Like, the destruction of the Black Panthers. Like, what are you talking about? like the history of the destruction of the critics of white power are pretty clear. Like, it's pretty obvious, dude. Then why are you allowed to criticize white people on this platform? I mean, I'm just getting started, man. You just wait. I don't have the same power as someone like Martin Luther King had, right? Whoosh. Okay, bud. Like, like the history doesn't matter, right? You could just believe what you like. Okay. Jeez. Yeah, Peterson is an insane person giving advice to people. He's almost using our language of social justice to protect himself. Yeah. He's talking about being ostracized as if he's being socially murdered for being fascist. Yeah. Well, it's a form of gaslighting, right? That's what we have left. That's all they've got left, is that you're the issue. You're the one that's crazy. You're the one who's nuts, right? That forget about history, forget about the events that have occurred, forget about the structures that exist. Forget about the facts. Certainly don't pay any attention to the evidence, right? Certainly don't pay any attention to the evidence. Because Innate Hog says, let's say I mentioned that Jews were controlled a disproportionate amount of power. That would get silenced immediately. Can you guess why? Yeah, because that would make you a Nazi. Right? Like, that would make you a Nazi. Basically. And in fact, my man, we get a lot of Nazis around here, so we don't need another Nazi, okay? Maybe grow up, stop being a little child. Certainly stop being a Nazi, okay, bud? Get the fuck out of here. You're a little kid who needs to grow up. Bye-bye. Yeah, Mr. Moon writes, the intellectual we deserve is one of the best things I've read on Peterson. Great read. Yeah, that's Nathan, I'm forgetting his name, Nathan Robinson. He points out of Peterson that, Peterson exists because there is an intellectual vacuum. Just very straightforwardly. There's an intellectual vacuum because actual intellectuals, so like people like Michael Parenti, Noam Chomsky, Chris Hedges, even people like Cornel West, they're not really permitted to get spread around. They're not really permitted into the conversation. You don't really see like panel discussions that include people like Noam Chomsky or Chris Hedges, or certainly never Michael Parenti, right? You'll never actually have any kind of genuine connection, or even like they'll never have those guys on Bill Maher. Like that's never going to happen. And if you live in this sort of anti-intellectual world, this world that really despises intellectualism and really despises what intellectual thought, then when someone comes along who has the veneer of intellectualism, who has the veneer of being an intellectual, then people actually listen because they're like, oh, here's an intellectual who's saying something really smart. Because I've never heard someone speak so articulately on these subjects, and man, he's a super smart guy because I've literally never heard anyone before in my life. And so when you're in a vacuum, when you're in an intellectual vacuum, like Peterson is the stupid person's smart guy. That's it. He sounds smart to stupid people. Like that's it. That's the long and short of it. And when you actually break down the stuff that he's talking about, it's essentially Oprah-ism. It's essentially just like The Secret, right? Like, and then once you start peeling into a social commentary, it's basically Nazi propaganda for the most part. So, yeah, he was facing losing his accreditation as a psychologist. Yeah, that's right. Like, but it's so childish. Like, it would be so easy for him to just admit that he made a mistake. To just be like, yeah, it's inappropriate for an accredited psychologist to tell people to kill themselves. Like, it's inappropriate. It's unprofessional. It shows badly. I'm actually more or less of the opinion that the way that the Council of Psychologists of Ontario are treating Peterson actually does shine pretty badly on the organization, just as it is. Just making him go take like a chorus or something. Like, he should not be a psychologist. If this guy is walking around telling people to go kill themselves, if this guy's walking around like sharing like like sharing cock milking porn and accusing the Chinese of it, like, come on. So anybody can become a psychologist, right? Like you literally just need to sit in a room for 5 years, right? Get a piece of paper, and then anybody can tell anybody what to do with their lives. That's basically what I see, right? That's basically what I see. That if these organizations actually had any teeth, a guy like Peterson would just not be a psychologist. They would just be like, oh yeah, dude, like no, like no, bro. Evening, DJ, how you doing? So pulling the conversation back to where I would like to pull it back to, right? Like, talking about Peterson's all well and good, but like I'm more or less of the opinion that he's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we have the conversations about Peterson that we have. It's embarrassing that the right takes Peterson seriously. It's embarrassing that the people who like Peterson are the ones that are about to take power. Like, we're about to become a very embarrassing nation, right? And it's going to get really, really stupid. Like, we're going to get really stupid really fast. Like, publicly stupid. It's going to be, like, worse than Idiocracy, right? It's going to be worse than Idiocracy. This is the thing that I always like to point out about the movie Idiocracy, right? The president of America in the movie Idiocracy acknowledged that there was a problem, set out to find a solution to that problem, found the person who could solve the problem, and that person, in fact, solved that problem. Which means that the president of America in Idiocracy is smarter and more effective than every United States president in modern history. This is my argument, and I would challenge anyone to prove me wrong or to even argue against that point. I would throw the gauntlet down. Like, he saw a problem, he acknowledged the existence of the problem, so that makes him better than basically every single president up to probably Obama, right? Because no president up to Obama acknowledged the existence of the real problems that were happening, right? Obama at least acknowledged the existence of the problems, even though he didn't do anything about them, right? And so that makes him, again, worse than President Macho, I forget his name, played by Terry Crews. Like, this is the path that we're going down. And it's going to be serious. And it's going to be very serious. Jay, good to see you, my man. Listening while I nap before midnight shift. Well, I'm glad that my soothing voice can help you as things happen, my man. The fossil fuels that humanity burns today will be a death sentence for many lives tomorrow. A recent review of 180 articles on the human death rate of climate change has settled on a deeply distressing number. Over the next century or so, conservative estimates suggest 1 billion people could die from climate catastrophes, possibly more. As with most predictions for the future, this one is based on several assumptions. One is a rough rule of thumb called the 1,000-ton rule. Under this framework, every 1,000 tons of carbon that humanity burns is said to indirectly condemn a future person to death. If the world reaches temperatures 2 degrees Celsius above the average global pre-industrial temperature, which is what we are on track for in the coming decades, then that's a lot of lives lost. For every 0.1 degrees Celsius degree of warming from now on, the world could suffer roughly 100 million deaths. If you take the scientific consensus of the 1,000 rule seriously and run the numbers, anthropogenic global warming equates to 1 billion premature dead bodies over the next century, explains energy specialist Joshua Pearce from the University of Western Ontario in Canada. Obviously, we have to act, and we have to act fast. The human death rate from climate change is extremely tricky to calculate, even in the present day. The United Nations reports that every year environmental factors take the lives of about 13 million people, and yet it's not clear how many of these deaths are directly or indirectly due to climate change. Some experts argue abnormal temperatures on their own may already claim as many as 5 million lives a year. Others estimate much lower. Part of the problem is that the global effects of climate change are manifold. Crop failures, droughts, flooding, extreme weather, wildfires, and rising seas can all impact human lives in subtle and complex ways. Predicting the future death toll of these climate catastrophes is inherently imperfect work, but Pearce and his co-author, Richard Parnkut from the University of Graz in Austria, think it's worth pursuing. They argue measuring emissions in terms of human lives makes the numbers easier for the public to digest, while also underlining how unacceptable our current inaction is. Global warming is a matter of life or death for 1 billion people, says Pearce. As predictions of climate models become clearer, the harm we are doing to children and future generations can increasingly be attributed to our actions. To stress that point, Pearce and Parnkut have applied the 1,000-ton rule to the Adani Carmichael coal mine in Australia, set to become the largest coal mine ever. If the entirety of this coal mine's reserves are burned, the authors say it could cause the premature deaths of about 3 million people in the future. Many of those who will die are already living as children in the global south, write Pearce and Parnkut. Burning Carmichael coal will cause their future deaths with a high probability. Technically, the 1,000-ton rule does not take into account possible climate feedback loops, which could make future environmental fallout from carbon emissions even worse, even faster. The rule is actually an order of magnitude best estimate, which means it's more of a range, somewhere between 0.1 to 10 deaths per 1,000 tons of carbon burned. That leaves a lot of room for scenarios even more dire than the one outlined here. When climate scientists run their models and then report on them, everybody leans toward being conservative because no one wants to sound like Dr. Doom, explains Pierce. We've done that here too, and it still doesn't look good. It's a hard reality, but it's one that the public and policymakers need to take head on. And they are not. Very straightforwardly, they are not. Baked Potato, good to see you, my man. You write, hey, John, these psychos can't take their money and possessions with them when they die, and that's a given fact. However, there's a chance they're going to spawn here again without all their wealth, which is how they got here in the first place, just randomly generated. They are literally setting the world on fire and destroying themselves in the process. Yep. And I think that people are being going pretty soft on them, frankly. That there is still within the conversation sort of an idea that these people are acting just foolishly, oopsie-doo, right? Oh, well, what, we couldn't have possibly seen. And I think it really is time, in seriousness, with no hyperbole or anger or rage, I think it is genuinely time for us to start taking very seriously the idea that these people are psychos. Like, genuine, legitimate, vampiric psychopaths. That it's starting to become indistinguishable, that even if it is them just being like, oopsie-doo, we didn't see it coming, well, they've lost their minds, right? So really the conversation is just, are they raving lunatics or are they aware of their lunacy? And that's basically where we are at in this conversation. And anybody that wants to stand in front of me and pretend as though what is happening is acceptable, I mean, at what point can we actually start saying that we are worse than the Nazis ever were? Mr. Moon writes, Australia is a petrostate, not too different from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Australius. Yep, and nobody wants to accept, like, the hard reality. I think one of the worst things that we have done in terms of our imagination of what the future is going to look like is that we are more or less of the opinion as a people that it's essentially going to look like this, like how things are right now, just the vehicles will be electric, right? The vehicles will be electric, and that'll be it. Mikhail writes, I wish we could avoid medicalizing the issue. If you can find the language, I'll use it. Mikhail. Like, that's where I'm at with this conversation. I understand where you're coming from, and I've definitely encountered, like, liberals, essentially, because it's a very liberal position to be like, oh, the language you're using is inappropriate, right? But no, like, denialism is like this is the problem. Is that the language that is appropriate for liberals and the language that is appropriate for liberal sentimentality, right? It doesn't even come close. It's not even attempting. It's not even in the wheelhouse. So what can we say? Because this is going beyond denialism at this point. This is going well above just simple acts of disregard or dismissal. This is literally watching your children roast alive in front of you while smirking and smiling and giggling about it. Like, this is where we're at in the conversation. And I just got to put it out there. I've just got to, like, put a nail in this coffin as much as I possibly can. If you guys are going to come in here and start hitting me with liberal language discourse, I'm going to shut it down right away. I don't care. I do not care. Take that liberal trash and put it in the garbage bin, okay? Like, I'm so sorry that there's some desperate billionaire psychopaths that don't want to be called psychopaths. Like, tough. Like, tough. If you think that you've got better language, then you start using that language. That's great. But I'm essentially over it, because it shifts the discourse away from, hey, we should all storm these guys' houses. We should all surround their houses, arrest them, incarcerate them, put them in jail, seize their assets, actually start doing stuff, and changes the discourse to, why are you being so mean? Don't you know that there are vulnerable groups? You're being a meanie. Stop being such a meanie. Fuck that nonsense. Get that fuck out of here. Get that shit out of here. Like, that's some liberal trash. I don't need it. And I'm done with it. For real. Like, if I'm straight up done with it. And if that's a deal breaker for you, you don't need to listen to me. Like, these people have become completely unhinged. They are raving, foaming at the mouth. They are acting in such a way so as to destroy the future of the species, and they know it. And they know it. They are saying out loud, climate change is real, by the way. Incidentally, I'm going to increase funding. I'm going to increase funding of the very thing. Like, if there was an army, like an army of orcs, let's make it like as clear as it possibly can get. If there was an army of orcs outside your door, smashing in the door, and you could just hear thum, 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 over and over and over and over again. You could hear it reverberating. You could go up to the top of the castle and look down at the orcs smashing on the door. Thum, thum, thum. And you went to the king, and you said to the king, hey, what are you doing about these orcs? What's the situation with the orcs? Are you forming up ranks? Are you funding a military action? Are you doing something about these orcs? What's going on with these orcs? And the king stood up and actually said, yeah, the orc threat. We're very concerned about the orc threat. And then you found out that he's the one funding the orcs. Like, and then if I stood up and said, oh, this guy's a psycho. Like, this is a psychopath who has obviously turned against us because he views us as a way to extract wealth for himself. And when the orcs come in here, hey, Dimitri, how you doing, bud? When the orcs come in here, I'm going to profit. And then if I said that in that circumstance and somebody actually said, now hold on a minute, John, get the fuck out of here. Like, come on. Like tough. Like, tough. Fane is doing well. Cool. Person I don't know. Oh, man. Hold on one second, guys. Sorry. Milo. He's a good boy. I got a good boy right here, don't I? Yes, I do. I've got a good boy right here. Yes, I do. Let me give you guys a better view of my little good boy here. Here, we can go like that. We can do a good boy. Yes. Like this language policing, right? Like, I understand why people do it. I think it comes from a position of powerlessness, that we don't have control of anything. And so people try to seize control of the stuff that they feel they can control, right? And to me, it's just like a waste of our time. It's a massive waste of our time. And Mikhail, I don't mean, like, I'm trying not to come hard down on you. Like, I'm really trying. But, like, I have had people in here who have, like, given me money, who have been in my Discord, who have funded me, right? And who would suddenly turn against me because I would use a word they didn't like. Like, tough. Like, toughen up. If the entire discourse is just what words are appropriate to use, instead of, hey, have you noticed how these people have addresses and we could go to their houses? Like, have you noticed that we could, like, organize and actually, like, show up at these people's places and create gigantic protest movements and actually start doing something meaningful? Like, it's a waste of fucking time, and everybody hates it. Like, there's a reason why the right wing is gaining in strength. There's a serious reason why the right wing is gaining in strength, and it's because they're exhausted with this kind of bullshit. Right? I'm exhausted with this kind of bullshit. Like, for real. That people are exhausted of this dumb bullshit. There is real shit happening. There is real serious shit happening. Oop. Milo. So after I've chewed you out, good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. Oh, wow. GoFundMe froze Gray Zone's fundraiser over external concerns. Yeah, those external concerns being highlighting the devastation of highlighting the evils of the empire. And again, like, we are in a position right now where the language that we have is limited. Like, I'm actually of the opinion that psychopath isn't even close. That, like, maybe I should just straight up use, like, but you can always find a problem. Right? You can always find a problem. If I were to call these people demons, right? If I was to say that they are dark, bleak, like, demons, then I get dismissed because, oh, that's just some kooky woo. So I can't win. Right? I can't win. Sean Fain is the UAW president. Oh, yeah, wasn't there good news about the UAW? Yeah. UAW members overwhelmingly authorize strike with 97% vote. UAW president Sean Fain, hey, look at that, announced today that the union strike authorization vote passed with near universal approval from the 150,000 union workers at Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Hopefully these guys aren't just going on strike for like a 5% increase in pay. Like for real. This is something that I'm getting really, really concerned about. Like, these strike actions are happening, and yeah, strikes, all this kind of stuff. Cool, we're going to get a 1% increase in pay. Like, not going to cut it, guys. Like, not going to cut it. It's just putting you on this perpetual treadmill of needing to have constant perpetual strikes. This is pretty awesome, though. The strike authorization vote at Ford passed by 98% and 99% by salaried represented workers. Like, that's overwhelming, right? Well, Mitsubishi's going for 40% increase. Yeah, that's a more serious number. 40% seems like a lot. I mean, I would be the guy in the union saying, why don't we just seize the means of production? Like, why don't we make it so that we're actually shareholders and that we actually own the company, and that the guy that owns the company, who does no work whatsoever and who's completely worthless, just isn't involved? Like, it is completely possible that this has reverberating effects and reverberating impacts, right? Jay says, I make parts for Ford, every other top auto manufacturer. Fantastic. They are demanding a 32-hour full-time work week. That's actually a little bit more serious. Right? What we need more than anything in this country is, without a doubt, a general strike. Like these. I understand why it's going down the way it's going down, but we need a general strike. We need literally everybody outside of the halls of power, just turning this country off, for very, very, very clear and obvious reasons, right? For very, very clear and obvious reasons, like our systems are not responding. They are not responding to the issues that are going on. Like, and things are getting more and more serious. And I think this is what's gotten me so disheartened. Like, I support people who go on strike. Like, no doubt. I'm not sitting here saying that what they're doing is bad or anything. I'm like, absolutely. Fantastic. Off you go. That's great. Demanding things like 32-hour full-time week, really, really great. Really great. Fantastic. Demanding 40% increase in wages, great. Fantastic, right? You're fighting for an increase in the quality of your own personal life. That's fantastic. We need a general strike to outright say this madness has to end. This madness has to end. Like, what we are doing is madness. Yeah, there's a strike at the NHS in England. Good labor struggle. We need more. Like, it needs to go beyond a simple conversation about our own individual well-being. It needs to go beyond this conversation of our own individual, like, oh, I individually am individually making more money for me as an individual. Like, and this is what most of these labor strikes seem to actually be about, is about improving the quality of life for me as an individual. And I'm a big fan. That's fine. But the fact that the powers that be are not responding rationally to this climate change crisis, like, congratulations, you're going to get a 40% wage increase before the flames come and burn everything down. You're gonna get a 40% wage increase before you suffocate because you can't breathe the air anymore, right? Like, congratulations. Like, you got a 32-hour week instead, a 4-day work week instead before you get to watch your children suffocate to death. Like, fantastic. Like, it's just like, and I understand why it's so difficult for people to get into this kind of mode of thinking, because it's tough, because it's difficult. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to spend our time living in this existential space that I am here actively trying to crack open, and I'm actively trying to break open. I'm actively trying to get more and more people to actually voice and talk about the reality that if we do not do something serious, very, very serious about this climate change issue, then it will wipe us out. Like, it will roll through us. It's not fucking around. It's not a joke. And the alarm bells are ringing louder than they ever have before. And while the alarm bells are ringing louder than they ever have before, the power structure is doing everything they can to accelerate. Like, it's all that we have left as a people. All that we have left is to withdraw our labor in a serious way through mass strike action. That's all that we have left. Because our leadership has gone psychotic, that they are disconnected from reality, that they are choosing fake numbers on a screen over breathable air, that this is the choice that they have been given and they've made their choice. And we keep hearing things like, oh, well, there isn't the political will, and oh, well, there isn't this kind of stuff. Well, you know what that means? That means that we need to walk off these jobs. That we literally need to throw our bodies into the gears to make this end. Because even if you succeed, even if your strike action is about getting higher wages or is about getting working less hours or any of that kind of stuff, the climate change issue is going to wipe us fucking out. And it's not a joke. It's not hyperbole, right? Like, put a pot on an oven, turn the oven on. What should you expect to see? Temperatures going up. What should you expect to see? And what I am seeing most people fall into, and the conversations that I am beginning to have with people on the subject, is a denialism that goes into a type of intentional stupidity, intentional obtuseness. That I've straight up had like 4 conversations over the last day where it was all I could say was, okay, you're just being intentionally obtuse on purpose. Because I think the issue is so horrifying for people that they can't actually look it in the face. They can't actually look it in the face, and they can't actually face it, and they can't actually take it seriously. From Twitch, You Win TV, the United States has enough money to build a solar farm to power the nation. Yeah. Like, there are all kinds of things that we could do, You Win TV. Like, this is the thing, is that how do we know that we are not taking this crisis at all seriously? Well, if you go down to Yonge and Dundas Square here in Toronto, or if you go to Times Square in New York, the place is lit up like a candle. Las Vegas is lit up like a candle, right? So that you can learn about like Timbit Biebs, so you can learn about Timbits and Justin Bieber, so you can learn about the Star Wars show, so you can learn about like America's Next Top Model or whatever dumb shit is happening, right? So that they can advertise trash and garbage to us, so that you can watch like hot models wearing the fashion that they want to convince you is what matters, right? The place is lit up like a candle. Turn the lights off, right? Real basic, simple shit. Like we are literally burning fossil fuels so that people who are standing at Yonge and Dundas Square can learn about like the next episode of The Apprentice. Like that's for real what we're doing. Like there comes a point where we have to acknowledge that this is being done on purpose. We have to acknowledge that this is being done on purpose, that the goal of the ruling class is to murder people. The goal is to murder people. Like, we have to actually talk this way. That this is not about convincing them that there is a problem. They acknowledge there's a problem. They say they agree with us. They say there is a problem. The President of the United States of America says that there's a problem, while turning around and handing fossil fuel subsidies to the fossil fuel industry more than ever before. At what point do we actually say out loud, repeatedly, over and over again, without shame and without hyperbole, that the wealthy are trying to murder us? When do we cross that line? When do we actually say in seriousness that the wealthy are trying to murder us? And as they murder us with these policies, as they watch millions, if not billions, of people die due to their policies, what's their plan? To escape to some bunker, to go to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, right? To go to some mountain place that we can't reach, and then they'll die there. That seems to be their plan. Mikhail writes, advocating for general strikes, the way that I have been, which is good, is what's making me seem like a madman, partially because I have a grandmother who's pretty severe mental illness. And genetic fallacies? I don't think I understand your comment, Mikhail. I don't think you're a madman for fighting for a general strike. It's literally all we have left. Like, the populace is beginning to understand that the system will not respond to anything other than strikes, but they are yet to understand the scale. They're yet to understand the scale of the betrayal, right? That we are not facing an oopsie-doo, right? We are not facing a group of people who are like, oh, we're trying and it's tough, right? That's not what's happening. We are facing a ruling class that has made the decision actively to betray us. And until that is well understood, until it is well understood that the ruling class has chosen to betray us, we are just going to keep falling for their dumb bullshit. We're just going to keep believing that these people can be negotiated with when they can't be negotiated with. It's not possible to negotiate with these people. Jay says, I guess a holiday will be nice and I could go for a raise and shorter work week if they are successful. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Jay. Like, these things are fine, right? There's nothing wrong with any of this. But it's just the scale of the issue that we're actually facing. My hope is that these strikes will be the opening volley for a larger action. Yeah. UN TV says, I don't know who Aaron Ra videos, but most Americans don't care about science. Yeah. That evidence and facts are no longer important. Like, it's just no longer important. That we have basically fallen into tribalism. I'm on the red team or the blue team, right? And that's all that really matters now. And people who comment on politics in the United States, right? They're basically picking a side and commenting on, and if they're not picking a side, they're still commenting on it as if the sides are different, instead of being allies with one another to protect capital. Jay says Siberian ice caps are melting, release 10,000 times more gas than humans now. Yeah, the vicious cycle has started. Mr. Moon says, looked at the article you showed, John, got this nugget. In 2023, polling in the Lowy Institute, Australians ranked the threat of China's foreign policy the same as the risk of climate change. Yeah, it's China's foreign policy that's the risk, certainly. Like, how dare they put their country's border so close to our military bases, right? Yeah, that's why it's getting so hotter and hotter so quick every year now. Yeah. A critique of genetic research on schizophrenia, extensive castles in the Air Joanne Moncrief. Mikhail, what are you commenting on here, man? What's going on? Eric says 15K shell a month, but Ukraine. This is Ukraine. Yeah. The Ukraine offensive is dead in the water. As if writes, good to see you, Asif. I once calculated that if you covered every roof in America with solar panels, it would meet at least a third of the country's energy needs. Yet how many well-off Americans have panels installed? Well, it goes beyond that, right? Like, we're not even manufacturing solar panels. Who's manufacturing the solar panels? It's China, right? China's the one that's actually manufacturing this. And we're doing everything we can to demonize China, right? Yeah, exactly. UN TV. I'm liking you, UN. You seem to have your head screwed on right. He writes, wanting climate change to stop is a woke idea now. Yeah. We never defeated the Nazis, just their leaders. Yeah. I mean, UN, like, what's the large organization that exists throughout Europe? NATO, right? That's the quote-unquote defensive alliance that exists throughout Europe. Okay, the quote-unquote defensive alliance that, likes to invade foreign nations. Defensive invasions is what they are. Well, who's one of their core members? Who's one of their core members? Is it Germany? Oh, yeah, it's certainly Germany, right? So an organization that was created specifically to destroy the Soviet Union the express specific goal of destroying communism and destroying the Soviet Union, well, one of its major members, Germany, didn't Germany do something? I can't remember what happened during World War II, right? And we all have this like collective amnesia that the Nazis exist and that the Nazis existed. And then when you actually take a look at the history of German integration into NATO, you find out very quickly that a lot of the former Nazi leadership, the Nazis that weren't actually tried at The Hague, of which there was only like 12 that were actually hung, and the ones, of course, that didn't end up in America thanks to Operation Mockingbird, they were integrated into NATO and rehabilitated. So this idea that the Nazi threat was destroyed, I completely agree with you, but I think it's worse than the way that you think. It's not that we killed their leaders. It's that we got a couple of their leaders and then reintegrated all the rest of their leaders into our systems, right? Into NATO, into NASA. Yeah, grinning. Ukraine is out of the news cycle in the U.S. I wonder why. Yeah. Waka wonk 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 wonk. Genetic research may have replaced blood as an excuse for racism and eugenics and whatnot. Oh yeah, they're just changing the language, Mikhail. Like that's it. It's language semantic games, right? No, this isn't eugenics. This isn't eugenics. No, we're not talking about dirty blood and eugenics. No. This is genetic research. That's what this is. This is genetic research. You started in the middle of my argument about how the Ukraine war as an example of the consequences of demanufacturing of the West. Oh, I see what you're trying to say. Yeah, like we've gutted our manufacturing base. Literally the only thing that we manufacture is guns. Like it's literally the only thing we manufacture. So we're not even making solar panels. So if we want solar panels, we've got to buy them from China. But every single time we try to do that, what happens? Somebody comes along and slams a tariff on us, right? Yeah, they're going to harvest solar energy and sell it to us. That's why they're not interested in allowing us to put up solar panels. Yeah, because if everybody had a solar panel and battery system of their own, then they can't meter electricity anymore. That's the big problem, right? We've known that for like 200 years now. That the reason why we can't advance in energy, right, and the reason why we can't have decentralized energy systems is because you can't meter it. That the capitalists thrive on withholding goods. That's how it works. They create fake scarcity. That's your capitalist innovation right there, right? When capitalists say capitalism innovates the best in the world, what they mean is capitalism innovates ways to make profit for themselves at the expense of the populace. That's how it actually works. UN TV writes, I can't believe people still want to fight against communism and socialism. It's a made-up enemy that's like us still fighting for the Crusades. Like, I mean, there are major organizations in the society that were created and exist in order to demonize and destroy communism, right? That communism as an idea is the largest threat to the capitalists. There is no larger threat than the threat of communism. Because communists will stand up and say, hey, these capitalists are worthless. They provide negative value in the society. We would be better off without them. Every time we've gotten rid of the capitalists and actually tried to operate for the benefit of the people, it's worked, right? Countervailing the CIA propaganda surrounding it. But when you live in an environment where you have massive multi-billion-dollar organizations, like massive billion-dollar organizations that exist in order to disseminate lies into the public, right? Like any time the public is reaching for a solution, it is deeply, desperately important that the public not actually grab hold of communism. It's desperately important that the public does not grab hold of communism, because if the public were to actually grab hold of communism, they would come to understand that, oh, it's the capitalists that are generating the crises, because the capitalists have found out that it's through crises that they can maximize their profits. That if we manufacture crises and if we manufacture disasters, then we can profit from those disasters, which is precisely what they're doing. And if the populace actually grabs hold of communism, the populace will come to understand that, oh, we should just get rid of these guys. Like this system of capital needs to go, and the people who are benefiting from the system of capital need to have their power stripped. That they need to go get jobs and become useful in the society. Grinning writes, you can't judge a bureaucratic country like China against the standards of U.S.'s plutocracy. China has a whole toolbox the U.S. doesn't. They'll be fine. Probably better than fine. Yeah, I think that's right. I've actually got 2 articles on this one right now. Like, this one, like, to the Washington Post's credit, this is from Xi Feng, who is the ambassador to China from the United States. Guys, just give me 1 second, okay? My dog is losing his little mind. Milo, buddy. Okay. You're just being a fat ass. But I need to straighten here, buddy. There. Peace. My little dog is like so chill during the day, we play a little bit. And the second I start streaming, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. Yeah, as if the xenophobia is crazy in Canada. Seeing Reddit responses to the secret police stations fiasco made that abundantly clear. Yeah. Like, people are suckers for just total nonsense, right? People are suckers for it. That the secret police stations lie. That this narrative, it's like criminal. That the media stations that were actually reporting on these quote-unquote secret police stations should be absolutely embarrassed with themselves. Like what secret police stations? Oh, you mean like satellite embassies is what these are. That the Chinese embassy will buy a house in a Chinese neighborhood so that little old ladies, like 90-year-old Chinese women, don't need to take a bus and come all the way down to where the Chinese embassy is located just to file a form or get a letter sent, right? That they'll just walk down the street to the satellite embassy. This is an incredibly common activity. This is an incredibly common and normal thing. And to call them secret police stations, first of all, they're not secret, right? They're not secret at all. The Chinese embassy lets the Canadian government know that it's doing this. Like, how did these journalists find out about these secret police stations? Not so secret, I guess, right? And we're reporting on things like the Chinese embassy will hire a van in order to go and get little old ladies to the voting booth so that they can vote, right? And this is Chinese interference in our electoral system. The Chinese government infecting our system. It's a disaster. And when you actually dig into the story, you're like, yeah, that activity didn't actually impact the results. And when you actually think about what it was that they were doing, it's like straight up like they're just getting people to the voting booth. Like, isn't voting part of the whole system? Isn't that part of the whole thing? Isn't the whole idea that people go vote? Is your complaint that it's like old Chinese people? Is that your complaint? Looks like. Yeah, Ligand Z, xenophobia was literally how I became tanky-pilled in 2020, 2021. My whole life I've essentially been fed the message that it's shameful to be Chinese and I should emulate others. Well, I mean, the Falun Gong exists, right? Like, and they've become like pretty significant in our society. Yeah, and even with the manufacturing of a gun, they can't even produce enough gear to fight a proper war. That's the core of my argument. Even though we have infinite money, which demonstrates the limit of money. Well, a lot of that money doesn't go to manufacturing. It doesn't go to actually doing anything, right? Like, if I'm the CEO of Raytheon and I'm getting $1 billion subsidy from the United States government, like, and I'm the one that's funding the politicians in order to get the subsidy, you know, all I got to do is cough up like a little bit of weaponry to actually fill a contract. And I'm the one who's basically setting the price of the contract. So it's like, yeah, we need 1,000 bombs. And I'll go, 1,000 bombs. That'll cost $10 billion. So So even if it costs $1 billion to manufacture, then I just pocket the $9 billion, right? Like that's how this works. They're not actually using all of this wealth and all of this money to produce anything. They're straight up just pocketing all of it, and that's what we're happening. Milo, dude, I definitely took you down, my man. That's not happening. What a character. Yeah, also capitalists don't like to point out the most disastrous policy in the USSR were capitalist. Yeah. Like, look, the USSR, I think it's so hilarious when people say, like, communism has never worked, because it obviously did. Like, it obviously did. Literally, the communists took, like, an agrarian nation, took an agrarian people ruled by a king, ruled by a monarch, and took them to be the largest superpower in the world in the space of a single generation. Like, get the fuck out of here. Communism doesn't work. UN TV really impressing us with his knowledge. Epic Times is Falun Gong. You got it. You got it. Shen Yun. Catabolic capitalism. I like that. No, you see, Chinese people living in Canada should have no ties to the evil, savage motherland and fully embrace Western values. Yeah, of course. Well, and it also pays to remember that, like, a lot of the people who leave China, right? Like, if you're leaving China when Mao is taking over, good to see you, Snake Bud. You've been working at Trader Joe's. I know, we're all grinding to the grindstone, my man. Do your best out there. Good to see you, man. Look, if you're getting ejected out of China, or if you're leaving China when Mao shows up, right? There's a reason for that, right? You probably weren't the good guys. You probably weren't walking around being like, yeah, the Maoists will be completely happy that I am here. The Maoists will be absolutely pleased at my activity in the country, and I will be rewarded by the Maoists. No, chances are good that you were fleeing because you knew you were going to face punishment. You knew that you were a scummy landlord. You knew that you were an imperialist. You knew that you were a collaborator. Like, you knew this, and so you left. It's the same story with what happens with the Gusanos, right? The Gusanos in Miami, who keep saying how Castro was such an evil person. My family had a plantation of slaves, and he said that we couldn't have our plantation of slaves. Like, it's this narrative over and over and over again. I'm just supposed to, like, go along with it. Nah. How thoroughly... This is from Cotton. Cotton always cuts through to the truth of everything. How thoroughly compromised does your own government have to be to actually have another country have police stations in your country? Yeah. Like, the reason why they use this language, police stations, is to just create hysteria, right? It's to just create hysteria. Yeah. Remember when I posted the Chinese Insider on the Discord? Well, the guys quoted the Epic Times. Yeah, Falun Gong. Right? Falun Gong, whose symbol literally has Nazi swastikas on it. Like, Falun Gong that is a racial death cult, right? Falun Gong that believes its leader can turn invisible. Like, straight up. There's a reason why these guys get ejected from China. There's a reason why Falun Gong is banned as a practice in China. Like, don't need extreme far-right racial purity cults using swastikas in order to spread their kooky little cult into our culture. And so we throw them out of China. Where do they end up? Here. Right? We're just like a hodgepodge of far-right fascists, and it's going to blow up on us pretty hard. So I think I'm going to read this one. The Chinese economy is doing better than you might think. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Hit the bells, hit the whistles, do all the stuff, right? Let people know I exist. Think of donating. If you've got $1 jangling around that pocket, if you found $1 in your couch cushions, if you've got $1 in a jar somewhere, maybe think about sending it my way. The Patreon's in the description. Gets you into the Discord. But failing that, please consider just telling people that I exist. Word of mouth is still the #1 way to market these days. So please let people know I exist. Xie Fang is the Chinese ambassador to the United States. The Chinese economy has been in the headlines recently. How is it really doing? better than you might think. Allow me to share some facts with you. This year, China's economy continues to recover and grow. Our gross domestic product expanded 5.5% for the first half of the year, outpacing most major economies. The World Bank has projected China's economy to grow 5.6% for 2023. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development expects 5.4%, and the International Monetary Fund projects 5.2%. As it has for many years, China remains a most important engine of global growth. One of the highlights of the first half of 2023 is the rebound in consumption, which contributed 77.2% of the growth, more than 44 percentage points higher than last year. Notably, people are spending more on services. From January to July, retail sales in transport, accommodation, catering, and other services grew 20.3% year over year. Some 502 million Chinese went to the movies this summer, more than the entire United States population. China's economy is also significantly greener and more innovation-driven than in the past. In the first 7 months of 2023, investment in high-tech industries and research and technical services rose 11.5% and 23.1% respectively. In July, the output of new energy vehicles, wind turbines, and charging facilities all increased roughly by 1/4. China's renewable energy generation capacity has overtaken its coal power capacity. Its installed capacity of wind and solar power has topped the world for 13 and 8 years, respectively. Foreign trade remains resilient. China continues to take up about 14% of the global export market. China's exports of electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, and solar cells surged 61.6% in the first 6 months of 2023. As demand continues to revive domestically, China will also import more. International businesses have voted with their feet. While transnational investment is lackluster globally, investment in China from overseas continues. France, Britain, Japan, and Germany boosted investment in China in the first half of 2023 by 173.3%. 135.3%, 53%, and 14.2%, respectively. Some 24,000 new foreign firms were established in China in the same period, up by 35.7% over year. Half of Tesla's global deliveries came from its Shanghai Gigafactory last year, which rolls out one EV every 40 seconds on average. Starbucks now operates more than 6,500 stores in China, opening one nearly every 9 hours. And don't forget, China's middle-income group, more than 40 million people now, is on a path to exceed 800 million by 2035, as China continues to upgrade consumption, ease market access, optimize the business environment, and strengthen supply and industrial chains. The fundamentals sustaining its long-term growth remain unchanged. Of course, the road to post-COVID recovery will not be smooth. It will feature undulating progress, often with twists and turns. In China, we do not shy away from problems. Rather, we address them head-on. In recent months, China has rolled out new policies to reinvigorate consumption, boost the private sector, and attract more foreign investment. One of our priorities is to prevent and diffuse financial risks, including policies to ensure the steady and sound development of the real estate sector. Such efforts are gradually paying off. With ample room in our policy toolkit, we are confident that we can forestall systemic risks. According to BCA research, China has been the source of more than 40% of global growth over the past decade, compared with 22% from the United States and 9% from the Eurozone. For many years, some people have dismissed China's contribution to global growth, or even hyped up the threat from a growing China. Now, as China is undergoing temporary economic adjustments, some blame China for dragging the global economy down. Others advance the China may collapse theory. Is this fair? This is a challenging time for everyone. The world is yet to recover from the trauma caused by the coronavirus pandemic. The Ukraine crisis is dragging on. Global recovery remains sluggish, and every country has its own problems to tackle. It would be short-sighted and indeed dangerous to sit idly by, gloat, or even make things harder for others. In a globalized era, bad news for anyone is bad news for all. Countries need to pull together to advance economic globalization and build a community with a shared future for mankind, where no one is left behind. More economic friends have come to realize that the notion that China could economically collapse and America still thrive is utter fantasy. The United States needs to lift technology export controls, investment restrictions, economic sanctions, and high tariffs against China. It must stop building parallel systems and seeking to decouple in the name of de-risking, which could only further complicate an already arduous global recovery. Instead, China and the United States should respect each other, coexist in peace, and pursue win-win cooperation. This is the only way forward, and the world expects no less. You ever hear an American talk this way? You ever hear an American say anything like this? You ever hear an American go on TV or publish anything in the Washington Post saying something like, hey, America should be a force for peace in the world. Hey, America should work to integrate itself into larger systems. America should actually work peacefully, right? This last paragraph especially, right? You ever hear any American anywhere at any time say, instead, any place that exists in the world and the United States should respect each other, coexist in peace, and pursue win-win cooperation. You ever heard any American anywhere at any time at any moment say anything like this? This would be considered egregious in America, in American politics. This would be considered just like weak, right? That's what we would say. Yeah. Jian, good to see you, man. Sounds well-informed and level-headed, completely un-American. So this is what gets published in the Washington Post, right? There is, and where did I have it? I had it. Hold on. I got it. There it is. This one's from the Global Times. Right? So that was what they were willing to publish in the Washington Post, right? That's what they're willing to publish on the Washington Post, i.e. what maybe 0.2% of Americans might actually end up reading, right? This is what they're publishing in China. Why Western predictions on China were mostly wrong in the past decade. Ideological bias, problematic political science, caused failed forecasts by Yang Shen. Now, it is worth pointing out that China feels the need to do this. That's worth pointing out, that the Chinese government feels the need to engage in this discourse, right? When commenting on China, some in the West only see a country constantly at the cusp of crisis, ranging from predictions of a China hard landing or China collapse to COVID as China's Chernobyl moment and the end of the Communist Party of China. Over the past decade, whenever China encountered difficulties and challenges, some Western politicians, scholars, and so-called China experts always repeat wild prophecies about the fate of China and the CPC. Needless to say, none was even remotely right. Far from it. China, under the leadership of CPC, has overcome various challenges, become stronger than ever, and is closer to the center of the global stage than ever. Even under the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, China has showed a much better performance than the West in saving lives and controlling the epidemic since the beginning, and its economic growth is still faster than most major economies, Chinese experts said. The wrong predictions about China in the past decade have shown an interesting trend of Western understanding of China, from downplaying China's development and exaggerating the problems that China has, to recognizing the fact of China's rise and how the anxiety of how to deal with a powerful China with a unique political system and culture that is very different from the West. In other words, from the China collapse theory to the China threat theory, say analysts. Wrong prediction. The China collapse theory is a typical example of wrong Western predictions about China, and there are quite a number of Western scholars who used to or still hold these opinions. A representative prediction of such a kind was made by Francis Fukuyama in 2012. China's top-down political system, under pressure from a growing middle class empowered by wealth and social networks, is likely to blow up at some point. Fukuyama told media that China has always been a country with a big information problem, where the emperor cannot figure out what's going on at a grassroots level. And this is in so many respects exactly the Communist Party's problem, because they do not have a free media. They do not have local elections. They cannot really judge what their people are thinking. Fukuyama is not alone in this regard. There were some other famous Western proponents of the hilarious theory that used their biased knowledge to predict China's course in the past 10 years, such as when former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in 2011 that the Chinese system is doomed in an interview with The Atlantic. Clinton said Beijing's human rights record is deplorable and is trying to stop history by opposing the advance of democracy. Gordon Chang, a well-known China collapse theory fanatic, has frequently prognosticated on China's collapse, but despite all indications to the contrary, he just kept changing the time of the collapse again and again. Why are they wrong? At the background of Fukuyama's prediction was the Guangzhou high-speed train accident of 2011, which sparked a massive discussion by the Chinese public on social media platforms, with many voices expressing safety concerns about public transportation, as well as questioning the credibility of the government over the crash investigation. But what the incident proving Fukuyama's assumption that the CPC has failed to grasp what Chinese people are thinking? Has the growing access of the Chinese middle class to the internet weakened the authority of the government? Analysts say the answer is clear. Fukuyama was wrong. In terms of social media, today China has more than 1 billion web users, compared with about 560 million in 2012. Why didn't the expansion of the web users weaken the political systems of China? The reason is that China has successfully developed online public opinion platforms that allow people to express their opinions, reflect on the problems of Chinese society, and effectively warn the government to fix them, said Zhang Yiwu, a professor at Peking University. In the past 10 years, China proved that its high-speed trains are reliable, and the country has the biggest and most advanced high-speed rail network in the world. The accident in 2011 did not stop the development of China or change the people's confidence in the country, says analysts. Many hotspot issues that were discussed every day on Chinese social media networks, like corruption and air pollution, have been effectively addressed in the past decade. The anti-corruption campaign launched by the CPC after the 18th CPC National Congress has successfully reshaped a clean and healthy political environment in China and has won full support from the people. Air quality in cities like Beijing has improved remarkably in recent years, and residents in the capital can see blue skies frequently, compared to a decade ago. All of these facts prove the CPC can effectively collect information about the grassroots, to find the problems and solutions, spot mistakes, and effectively correct them as soon as possible, experts noted. Zhang Weiwei, director of the Chinese Institute of Fudan University, told the Global Times that Western political scientists or scholars have made a lot of efforts to predict events in the world, but most of the time, they failed. They failed to predict the collapse of the Soviet Union in the past, and they also failed to predict the rise of China. They couldn't even predict the rise of Trumpism, and most Western economists failed to predict the financial crisis in 2008. There are two main problems with the failure of the West to make correct predictions about China, Zhang said. First is that they have ideological bias, as they believe China or any non-Western country will eventually be westernized, as long as it wants to be modernized. Another problem is that Western political science is based on the experience of Western history, so when Western scholars use such science to analyze China, a country with an entirely different civilization, they will come to unreliable conclusions most of the time. Correct prediction. Of course, not all predictions from other countries about China are pessimistic, but the problem is that Western media and society does not pay enough attention to these predictions. Martin Jacques, a former senior fellow at the Department of Politics and International Studies at Cambridge University, made some correct predictions in his work published in 2010 2009, when China rules the world. Jacques said, China's history and its culture is so different, then you cannot make sense of it using a Western template. My book was very controversial when it was published in 2009, because basically it did not accept what was then the Western common sense about China. Chinese economic growth would continue for a long time to come, because its level of development allowed that possibility, Jacques said. Jacques holds an entirely different opinion compared to many other Western scholars who always demonize the Chinese political system or the governance of the CPC in China. Far from being in crisis, in fact, support for the Chinese political system had increased and would continue to increase as long as China was successful, he said. Because the people can see that it has worked extremely well for China and therefore would strengthen the political system in China, China would not only remain very different, but globally, as China rose, there would be an increasing process of sinification of the world. In other words, growing Chinese influence in lots of different ways around the world, Jacques said. On how to analyze China correctly, Zhang Weiwei has some suggestions to Western scholars. They should observe polls from credible and authoritative institutes like Pew and Ipsos, as they conduct surveys on large samples of people on topics like government satisfaction in successive years, and you will get a cautious conclusion by a comprehensive comparison of that data. Second, to do the field research, rather than only staying in the house to focus on data and secondhand sources. Otherwise, your conclusions will be far from the facts. I mean, you guys know here at the Canadian Commie, somebody on Twitch being very comedic. I have to assume you're joking. Anti-Antifa. Yeah, if you are anti-fascist, that makes you fascist. No, bud, you're just falling for fascist propaganda, right? The fascists want you to believe that communism is as bad as fascism. It's real straightforward. Like, if they can convince you that the solution is a poison, then they can poison you. Baked Potato writes, Huawei just released their newest flagship phone with native-produced chips. So much for sanctions. Meanwhile, China's trade surplus continues to climb, with trade increasing with the global south and exports decreasing with Western countries. China is running circles around the arrogant West. I think the big surprise will come when China achieves AI mastery and applies it to manufacturing and science and technology know-how. They are in the beginning stages of doing this already. Instead of using AI just for chatbots, like here in the West, China's AIs are used to manufacture goods and build infrastructure. They have nearly a monopoly advantage in this space. Well, and I think one of the things that China has over the West, that the West is committed to this free market system, that the free market will decide, right? That we're just going to wait for those entrepreneurs to come in with their good innovative ideas because they're incentivized by profit in order to put ideas into the marketplace of ideas, and then the good ideas will surface to the top. And, well, what do you end up with? You end up with a lot of garbage. And you end up with a lot of wasted productivity because everybody makes the same thing, right? So you're constantly having independent groups constantly reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. And then maybe through that process, sure, you eventually, through a process of mergers and acquisitions, you end up with one company that actually produces the one thing that AI is actually going to be really good at over time, right? Meanwhile, you compare that to what China does, which is that they sit down and they think and they go, what could we use this for in an effective way? What way could we effectively use this to make it actually really effective and really useful? And then they do that, right? And then they look at it and they think, oh, that's not being as effective as we were hoping it was going to be. And then they change it, right? And then they mess with it and they do it. And they take all of their productive capacity and all their productive force and they focus in on that thing. And so by the time we actually generate the AI thing that for what it is, given our free market system of craziness, the Chinese have already iterated on it 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 times. And so that's how they're getting ahead of us, because they do something that we despise, which is called planning. We really despise planning. And we're skeptical of the idea of making a plan and then executing that plan. Top G writes, what has Antifa Black Bloc done in the last 10 years? Defended themselves against fascists. They have achieved nothing apart from rioting against fascists. That's right. I mean, if you're anti-Antifa, but it's not hard to figure out whose side you're on this conversation. Like, as long as you ignore the existence of fascists in the conversation, then you can believe whatever you like. And so we're having a situation now where the reckoning is coming, right? And China is pretty aware of it. Like, to be fair and balanced, TM, China is releasing these kinds of articles in order to stabilize itself in its own country. That it sees that there are definitely internal rumblings, right? Internal dissension, that this period of time has been destabilizing, even in China, right? Even in China. And so this destabilization that exists in China needs to be responded to. And so they're releasing articles not just here, but also in the United States, in the Washington Post, right? And these articles are designed to remind people that the Chinese system is stable and there is stability. I just noticed here, I should have made note of this earlier, and I'm going to make note of it here just for clarity. This article here, Why Western Predictions on China Were Mostly Wrong in the Past Decade, was published July 17th, 2022. So a year ago. And I'm actually blown away that they even published something by the Chinese ambassador. I think that that's actually like pretty shocking for America. America doesn't exactly have a big, strong history. Like, imagine if they let, like, the ambassador to the Soviet Union publish something in the Washington Post. It'd be that kind of level. Like, China's not going anywhere. This is the big thing that is going on. China is not going anywhere. That America and the West can't go to war with China. And so what we are faced with is a very serious choice, which is that we can either start to take seriously the idea that we should work cooperatively, that we should actually work with China in order to try to improve the quality of life for all of Earth's citizens, or we continue playing this game of free market capitalism and keep pretending as though it's working when it's not. Like, we are falling behind. I've been saying it, like, forget about the climate change conversation. Forget about any of that kind of stuff. Just in a simple, basic, how are the citizens doing? What's the trajectory for the nation? We are falling behind. We don't have a manufacturing base anymore. We don't actually produce anything meaningful. All of our jobs, quote unquote, that exist either exist within the service sector or the financial sector. The professional sector basically exists to uphold capital at this stage in the game. That's your police and legal system. Like, what is it that we're at? How are we actually going to compete? How are we actually going to stay abreast of the Chinese as they begin to overtake us in these big and serious and significant ways? Like, and what's it going to mean for the citizens of the West? What's it going to mean for the citizens of Canada, for the citizens of America, for the citizens of Europe? And the capitalist class has very simply told us that what it's going to mean is just tolerating a decline of our living standards. That's what they're saying to us, openly, repeatedly, over and over and over again. That while China is outright saying in front of its citizens and in front of the world that its objective, its stated agenda for its citizens is to improve their quality of life, our systems are saying to us over and over again that we just need to tolerate a decline in our quality of life. Charlie Munger literally said 2 days ago that people just need to expect less. And this is the strategy of the West now. This is the strategy of the capitalist class. Because it's not about actually improving the quality of life. It's not about improving living standards. It's not about actually doing something that benefits the society in any kind of meaningful way. It's about securing more wealth for themselves. That's what it's actually about. That it certainly is the case that the Chinese political class has done well for itself. Xi Jinping is a billionaire, for example. But they haven't done this at the expense of their own citizenry. That they are actually lifting people out of poverty, and they are actually improving the quality of life for their own citizens in a way that is so obvious that to pretend otherwise is an embarrassment. Meanwhile, our living standards are in decline. Literally, I read an article just the other day on this stream. 50% of the society is $200 away from insolvency. Like, that is a failing society. That is a society that is in collapse. We are amidst a major housing crisis. We are amidst a homelessness crisis. And we are simply doing nothing about it. We're not even trying to do anything about it. Genghis Khan 233 on Twitch comes in, just says Antifa with a little smiley face. I hope you're here to be beautiful, my man. We get lots of Nazis in here, okay? So maybe don't be a Nazi. So more good news coming out of British Columbia. Property tax reforms could help tackle BC's extreme wealth inequality, economist writes. The issue, of course, with this kind of thinking is that, like, we know, like, raise taxes on the wealthy, right? But the issue now is that we've created a system, a globalized system, that allows the wealthy to be more liquid than ever before. And they outright say to us, you can take a look at the relationship between California and Texas, for example. There's a very, very clear example of wealth flight where the people who flee from California, the capitalists that abandon California to Texas, and they tell you outright why they're doing it. Because they can extract more wealth from Texas than they can from California. And the system of wealth extraction and abandonment that exists in America is a failure. That if British Columbia were to actually enact any of this kind of legislation, right, well, you would just see the wealth extractors move to a different location. Genghis Khan writes, but how am I? I hate how people use that term. It's overused. I mean, I don't use the term Antifa. I mean, I'm a communist, so I'm anti-fascist by definition, right? The communists have a long history of fighting against fascists. I find that the term Antifa comes up because people are not willing to accept communist, right? And it's a difficult position to argue from because it's been so demonized and propagandized against by the CIA and the State Department and other forces, and people are just kind of gullible and they believe it. So groups started to use this word Antifa to describe, yeah, dude, when people come in here talking about racial supremacy, when people come in here talking about how they worship Hitler, those people are Nazis, right? No, I am using the term Nazi to mean Nazi. I'm not using it to say, oh, you like private property rights, you're a Nazi. No, I'm talking about people who come in here with names that are like, I love Hitler 1, 2, 3. People who are basically saying, Heil Hitler. Like, I'm talking about Nazis, my man. So take it seriously. And if you start talking about the Jews, I'm just going to ban you, okay? Like, the reason why I give you this heads up is because yeah, you're named after a Mongolian warlord, but I don't know, dude. Like Genghis Khan. Can you imagine? Can you guys imagine if right now I was just like, Genghis Khan murdered thousands of people. He was a warlord. How dare you come in here with the name Genghis Khan? No. I mean, I would be more offended if, like, it was, like, Genghis Khan, like, fought against the communists. Like, if Genghis Khan was, like... But Genghis Khan was of a different era, dude. Like Genghis Khan is a whole other thing. I can't base my political opinions on Genghis Khan, I tell you why. Yeah, when Twitter tried to cancel Genghis Khan. This is what I'm talking about. Like, yes, we all acknowledge. We all acknowledge that Genghis Khan was probably not great. If Genghis Khan was alive today, we'd probably all be, like, in fear of Genghis Khan, for sure. Like, I wouldn't be a fan of Genghis Khan. I would probably be arguing against Genghis Khan. But, like, the idea that Twitter is going to try to cancel Genghis Khan, come on. Get out of here with that shit. Like, get out of here with that shit. Like, he's at this point, like, he's just a historical figure. Like, there's no, like, anti-Genghis Khan movement. There's no anti-Kongists, right? That's not going to happen. Generation Y Me writes, God, edgelords are annoying. What exactly is an edgelord? Generation Y Me. Can you define edgelord? People say this all the time, but I fear that I'm in a boomer space with this. I fear that this came up underneath me, and I've just kind of been, I am that meme where I'm like, I don't know what edgelord means, and I'm too afraid to say. I'm too afraid to ask at this point, right? An edgelord is edging a blade during LARP? Bro, this is what I'm talking about. What's going on? What's going on with the kids these days? I need an interpreter. It's happening, guys. It's happening. I'm becoming full-scale boomer. It's happening. I'm getting old. I'm 40 now, right? So there's like people who are 20, right? Half my age. And they're like, no, but even saying this is going to be like totally like, yeah, that's lit, fam. Even that's too old now. Even that's like old man talk. LARP is live act. I don't think this is what he's talking about, my man. I don't think he's talking about live action role play. I like where the conversation has gone. I need a bit of a break. People who just love being edgy, usually it involves shitty jokes. Yeah, fair enough. Like people who are trying to get a rise. Kid shit. That's stuff that kids do all the time. Like I remember doing that shit when I was a kid. Right? When you're like 14, 15, 16, right? Like you're trying to get a rise out of people. It's how you are. Right? It's how everybody that age is. So I didn't realize that we had a name for that now. I didn't realize that we were just like, oh yeah, because the word that we used to use for them was just teenagers. That's all. We just used to be like, oh yeah, like post-pubescent teenage boys who are just like, I have testosterone. Oh, reality is a swirling abyss of pain, and I hate everybody. I'm gonna piss everybody off as much as I can. What do you hate? You hate this? Then I'm that. Real simple. Real simple. People who are trying to get a rise is a good description. That's what the kids are calling it. Good to see you, Aaron. Yeah, so the kids are called edgelords, right? Oh, Genghis Khan, I think, has a real... Here we go. But it means a poster on an internet forum, particularly 4chan, who expresses opinions which are either strongly nihilistic, life has no meaning, or Tyler Durden's special snowflake speech from the film Fight Club being popular, the two main examples, or contain reference to Hitler, Nazism, fascism, or other taboo topics which are deliberately intended to shock or offend readers. It's basically a Call of Duty voice lobby. Wow. Genghis Khan actually... That's like a cut and paste. That's some like copy pasta right there, man. I love it. Oh, Silverlight, good to see you, bud. Good to see you. Silverlight writes, aren't there like an insane amount of Genghis Khan descendants? Like he was incredibly promiscuous. Yeah, apparently like something like 6% of the populace can trace their bloodline back to Genghis Khan, which is like a huge amount of people. That's an enormous number of people. Yeah, but the Mongols made the same mistake as Stalin. They didn't continue west. Yeah. I also, like, I'm more or less of the opinion, I don't know that much about Genghis Khan, but I am more or less of the opinion that they really weren't trying to set up something that was going to last. Like, I really think that they were just like, ride or die, let's go. We're on this, like, tour. You know, like the rise and fall of the Mongolian Empire, the Genghis Khan. No one suspects Shao Kahn. That's right, dude. That's right. Hey, Earth Warriors, man, we're keeping it together, okay? We're keeping it together. Clearly, we haven't been invaded by Outworld yet. So, you know, Earth's greatest. Like, what do you think happened to Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? That guy, he's just disappeared. He doesn't make movies anymore or anything like that, right? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Silverlight, yeah, you gotta ground it. Yeah, tour, nice way to put raping and pillaging all they can. Yep. I have also heard people make an argument that Genghis Khan was reacting to illegitimate power structures. That when you look at the history of the Mongolians, Genghis Khan basically goes through Mongolia and essentially cleanses the land of these illegitimate institutions, and that he didn't really set out to build institutions. He set out to purge institutions from Mongolia. And once they did that in Mongolia, he was just like, well, let's keep going. What's the source of these institutions? Where are these institutions coming in from? Oh, they're coming in from over there. Let's go over there, right? And we're here to fuck these guys up, and they did. They fucked people up, man. And it really tells you, it really does show you how at the time there must have been, and I'm speaking from a place of not ignorance, but I'm not an expert. This is bardic knowledge, what's happening right now, okay? This is straight up what I would describe as bardic knowledge, which is that, like, at some point in my life I read something about this, and this is what I think, okay? So if an expert were to come up to me and be like, you are wrong, here is why, this is the source, I would be like, yep. I will definitely bend to their authority, okay? But my general feeling is that Genghis Khan shows up, is basically pissed off with all of this nonsense that's happening all around him all the time. Everybody else is like, yeah, we too are also pissed off with this nonsense. And he basically goes, ride or die? Just fucking ride or die? You want to just ride or die and just blow this whole thing up? And everybody goes, yeah, let's do that. And they just did that. They just went around and it really could be the case that it's not that the Mongolians, it's not that Genghis Khan is like this enormously powerful leader or any of this. It's that the military structures and the institutions around him are so weak that it's that combination, that he is willing to get all of these guys on horse and be warriors and go throughout and show up at these places and fuck them all up, while they simultaneously have become fat and lazy, basically. They're just gluttonous gluts that aren't, oh yeah, sure. Like, don't get me wrong, Aaron. Like, I'm not trying to say that he was, like, discriminating. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there was a bloodthirst. Can we use the word bloodthirst? Is that a good word to use for Genghis Khan? Do we all agree that there is, like, such a thing as, like, bloodlust, and that Genghis Khan and his army were basically bloodlusted? We could probably say that that's true, right? Like, just more blood. Generation Why Me writes, Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't in Mortal Kombat. Jean-Claude Van Damme is now in Mortal Kombat 11. So, checkmate, atheists. They got him. They got the Terminator. They got Rambo. They've got Alien from Alien versus Predator, and they got or Alien from Alien, and they got Jean-Claude Van Damme just recently. So, checkmate. that movie Mongol is so sick. It's finally getting a sequel like 10 years later. Depicts the first part of his life. Dude, if you want to see one of the greatest Genghis Khan movies, I love that this is all descending into just Genghis Khan. I didn't predict that happening. John Wayne Genghis Khan. I'm misspelling the hell out of all that, but that's fine. The Conqueror. The Conqueror, dude. What an absolutely hilarious movie this actually is. They cast John Wayne. Hey, John Wayne had a long and respectful career as a CIA propagandist, okay? Like, you leave John Wayne alone, okay? We couldn't have done a lot of the stuff that we did without John Wayne promoting war across the globe, okay? So how dare you? Like, they took John Wayne. Look at this mustache. Look at this beautiful, glorious mustache that they've got him in. And they got John Wayne saying things like, I am Genghis Khan, here to conquer. You won't ever recover. Oh my God. You're like, I'll watch it, bro, if you watch Mongol. I don't know, bro. I don't know that I care. I gotta tell you. Like, I just, this is the thing. This is the reason why I'm not like a Genghis Khan expert. Like, I just don't care. You know? I think I know everything I need to know about Genghis Khan. Although, I don't know, dude. Is it like on a scale from Highlander to Conan the Barbarian, where does Mongol stand? Like, is it good? No, that's a bad scale. On a scale from this movie, like a John Wayne the Conqueror movie, to Conan the Barbarian, where does Mongol stand? Right? And don't you dare tell me that Mongol is better than Conan the Barbarian, because you are wrong. Conan the Barbarian is a magical movie. It is a magical film that supersedes storytelling itself. So how dare you? John Wayne got a good dose of radiation from a nearby nuclear test site while they were filming this movie. That is actually hilarious. I think the most important John Wayne fact that I know is that John Wayne was like the Robert Downey Jr. of his day, right? That John Wayne was the guy who was known for being the cowboy, right? Like, John Wayne is the American cowboy, and he is the star of what was his last movie? I need to find out John Wayne's last movie. He was the gun-slinging cowboy that would come in and kill the villain, right? He like literally just popularizing the Old West cowboy. And his final film, he wins an Oscar for his final film. Definitely not Star Wars. Where he plays the washed up Western, like a washed up. He's a drunk, and he basically plays antithesis of his career. He takes this sort of legendary figure of the cowboy and plays like a more realistic version of what that would actually look like, and instead of leaning into the glory, and instead of leaning into the myth, he leaned in towards the reality of what it would be to be such a figure in the West. And that to me showed a great amount of courage, I felt, at the end of his life, to take something that he was sort of emblematic and known for, and to turn that around, and instead do something like that. There's a boldness to doing that. I watched Conan not long, read Sonya the other day. Yeah, Conan's one of the best of all time, right? Conan's one of the greatest of all time. I now need to watch Conan. Yeah, Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. No, just Conan the Barbarian. You don't need to deep dive it, right? Like, as with most things that happen in our culture, the first one is truly excellent and they get it right because it's a labor of love where they've really like defended the position. They've convinced people that this should be made. There are pieces that exist in the culture in order to make it so that this movie makes sense. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's existence in the culture makes this movie make sense, right? Without Arnold Schwarzenegger, you do not get Conan. Right? Like, you take a look at Conan the Barbarian, you're like, that is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is Conan the Barbarian. And anytime they try to do a version of Conan in terms of comics or anything like that, they've got to, like, change the face so they don't need to pay Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's his body, right? Like, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's body is Conan the Barbarian, right? No two ways about it. And they were able to shoot it on location. They were able to get, I forget her name, but Grace, this beautiful black Amazonian woman they got to play. They got James Earl Jones is in this movie as like the snake cultist guy. Like, it's just this like perfect combination of actors and directors and writers in this moment to tell this like really weird, kooky, oddball story of this guy wandering the wastelands, Conan the fucking Barbarian. But it's like a perfect story that they just tell. It's got no fat on it at all. There's nothing in there that you don't need, and it's just it hits like epicness. You're watching it, and you're just like, you know, you're seeing something that has like a biblical kind of scale to it, and so they make the first one, and it's good. Right? And The Matrix is like this too, where they make the first one and it's really good. It's a labor of love and it's this brilliant film. And then they just shit out a bunch of stuff because they're like, money! There's money here! People will give us money for just shitting this stuff out. And like, maybe you could like pick and choose some stuff that was actually worthwhile, but like, basically everything past the first Conan movie is like, you know, you got to basically be like a Conan head. You got to be walking around wearing like the belt and be quoting Conan, you know, to really give a shit about any of that kind of stuff. That's how I feel about The Matrix. Like, Matrix 1 is like important cinematic film watching. Like, I think that The Matrix is like an important film for American filmmaking. And then Matrix 2, 3, and 4 are just like... I don't care how stupid MK lore is. I love it. Yeah, dude. No, the stupider it is, the better it is, if you ask me. Like, Mortal Kombat lore was always stupid, and the stupider it gets, the better it is. Like, Mortal Kombat 11 was literally like, multi-dimensions, nothing matters, who gives a shit? Liu Kang is a time god, sure. Hey, and now they're doing another game, and they're literally like, Liu Kang makes a Mortal Kombat 1 universe where everything starts at the beginning. So it's just like, oh, you guys are straight up out of ideas. But what's hilarious about how Mortal Kombat is that you would say to them, oh, you guys are straight up out of ideas. And they would go, yeah, we're straight up out of ideas. Look how hard we're committing to the idea that we're straight up out of ideas. And you're just like, okay, I love it. Let's go. He also wanted to assault Shasheen Littlefeather when she made that speech in place of Marlon Brando. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, that's the thing about John Wayne, is that most of the time he wasn't acting. You know? That's just it. Most of the time he wasn't acting. We're going to go shoot a bunch of Indians. Yeah, I'm sure you would, John. I'm sure you would. Eric, here's a fun fact about Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is one of those rare films where the sequel is actually the best thing. Like, the first movie they made and it was good, but then they were like, I think that we can actually do this better, and then they were right. They actually committed to it, and they actually made a better film for the sequel. It's very unusual to see that happen. Usually it is the case that the first one comes out, it's a labor of love, they hit the mark, and then they just shit out a bunch of stuff. But Terminator 2, for some reason, it's just they got everything right. And then they shit out a bunch of stuff and ruined everything, but that's fine. During the production of the movie, Arnold forgot that he was wearing his Terminator makeup, where he had to have his face blown off, and walked into a restaurant full of people. People were giving him dirty looks and pointing at him. Snake writes, it's a realistic interpretation, and I love Conan, but closer to that in the scale. Okay. That's good enough. I feel like if you create like a good... Give me where it is. If you had a said in the middle, I don't think I would pay any attention to it. But you're giving me closer to Conan? Okay. Robert E. Howard books are great too. And it's Pam Grier. No, we're talking about Grace Jones. Grace Jones is the correct answer. Grace Jones. One of the greatest casting decisions in maybe film history is casting Grace Jones in Conan. Look at this. Look. Hold on. What are you doing to me? I had the perfect picture. Like, look at this. This is crazy what they got her in. Look at this getup that they've got her in. And she's just destroying it. She is just rocking this outfit. This is how you know that Grace Jones... Oh, we got to pause everything, you guys. Zoom Bamafo wants to be heard when he says, you are a commie bug who needs to be stomped. Very serious person. What a serious person saying such serious things. Maybe it's time to grow up a little bit, bud. That's all. Maybe it's time to grow up a little bit. Look at how amazing she looks. And this is the thing about Grace Jones in this outfit, is that sometimes people put on outfits like this. Sometimes people put on outfits like this and the outfit is wearing them. That what you remember is the outfit, right? That's the takeaway, is the outfit. And then you're like, oh yeah, they were in that outfit. But Grace Jones, you're like, no, I remember Grace Jones, right? She's what I remember. Dude, I need to see more Grace Jones is what I need in my life. What an absolute baller. Like what an absolute champion. Like, just like, there it is. There's the picture that we're looking for. If John was the premier of the West, he would abolish sequels. I don't think I would abolish sequels, but I definitely would be like... I think I would force moratoriums. That's what I would do. Like, if somebody gave me straight up, like, dictatorial power and everybody had to listen to everything I had to say, which would be a disaster for all of us. I'm not trying to argue for that. But I definitely would say, like, if you make a movie and it's successful and people like it and you want to make another one, you got to wait 5 years. Tough. Like, tough. Too bad. You don't just get to shit out this stuff, right? Make something good. Make something good. Grinning. Why you gotta call me out like that, my man? Huh? We're all having a good time here, you know? You don't need to call me out like this. Less costume, more grace, you lonely. How dare you, sir? How dare you? But you know what? It's not even that. I'm not sitting here saying that I am sexually attracted to Grace Jones. That's not what I'm saying. That she is just a striking person. She looks like a striking individual. That simply putting her into a role and having her on camera in a scene is going to augment and add something to the scene that otherwise wouldn't be there. She has a rare element. There's something rare in Grace Jones that most people don't have. And that isn't actually beauty, right? She's a beautiful person. I'm not trying to say she's like ugly or anything like that, but striking is the word. She has this energy that is just power. And the fact that like her being in Conan is exactly right. It's exactly right. She is supposed to be in Conan the Barbarian because you see her in the role that she is standing beside Arnold Schwarzenegger, and at no point, I remember seeing her when I was a kid, and at no point did I fall into that like little boy kind of thinking that you get so much today in the manosphere of thinking like, because manosphere guys, what would they say? They'd be like, oh, they just put a woman in this movie to make sure, well, there's your diversity. A black woman, no less. Gotta check all those boxes, right? It makes sense that Conan would be a strong and powerful man. He looks like a strong, he's got all these muscles and all this, and he's trained and all this, but they're putting this, like, little girl beside him, and oh, yeah, she's so tough, and she's fighting just alongside him, and all. Like, how often have we heard this from the manosphere? But they would never say that about Grace Jones. And if somebody did say that about Grace Jones, I'd be like, shut up, you're an idiot. Like, that's a stupid thing to say. You sound like a baby. Like they might have some kind of a point if they were to cast, like, a tiny person who doesn't look the part. Grace Jones looks the part. She looks like she could walk into the room with that stick and beat the shit out of anybody, right? That like that Arnold Schwarzenegger would have a tough time fending off somebody like this. She looks like she could just go straight up Banshee mode on you, and you would just be like, oh, okay. Eric writes, I know a guy in a religious group that I am in Facebook. He will casually say stuff like communists and Marxists deserves to be thrown out of a helicopter. Pinochet was the best thing for the country. So your friend's a Nazi. Right? We can just call it as it is. Your friend's a Nazi. Not a single religious person except me pushes back. Yeah, I love how deranged right-wingers are, and they're shocked when we push back on their nonsense, especially when you challenge them on the narrative that 100 million people dead, expose how fraudulent that number really is. Yeah, look, like Grinning writes, religious people are just looking around to find the approved opinions. It's due to social hierarchy, not their morality. Just my take. I think there is a bit of that. Like, I think that you're onto something with that, Grinning. Like, it's about being part of the in group. That's what it's about. That if everybody around you is saying Pinochet was the greatest thing for Chile, right? Then you want to be on the in group, then you better say Pinochet was the greatest thing for Chile, right? Whether or not you know anything about it, whether or not you know anything about the subject, it's just what you say, so that you're part of the in group. Because if you don't, then you get castigated. You get thrown out of the in group, right? Or if you're in the in group, then you're that guy, right? And nobody wants to do that. Oh yeah, Genghis Khan. I share that religious nutter thing. Not Mormonism. I was evangelical Christianity. Yeah, used to be a religious nutter, not anymore. I have insight to the whole Mormon sect. Yeah, I have Mormons in my family, on my mom's side. Cousins, and it's interesting. Like, I get why people gravitate towards these things, and I think it is just about community, and it is about, and there's nothing inherently wrong about building these kinds of communities and having these kinds of things. There's nothing inherently wrong about it. The trouble is when you start to get into like a fundamentalist mode of thought, when you get into this mode of thinking that says my little kooky group and my little title and the costumes that we wear and the book that we wrote and all of this, this is the only thing, and anything outside of this is false or fraudulent. That's where the trouble comes in. Because my opinion is more or less that people will create kooky little religions just by a force, just by force of nature. Like, one of the things that I think about all the time, and I work against, because I don't want this to happen, is that this whole thing could turn into a weird kooky little cult. Like, I actually am of the belief that if I leaned into the idea that this whole thing could be a weird kooky cult, I could probably make a lot more money. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles. Think about donating $1 to the Patreon if you've got $1 jingling around in your pocket. Support the stream. Support your local communists, right? Maybe one day I'll actually be able to say some of this stuff significantly to more significant people. But for that, I need your support. So send $1 to the address below. Jesus loves you. But more importantly, even than that, because I actually do hate asking for money, more importantly, even than that, please, please, please do consider telling people I exist. Share me around. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell somebody who's looking for a new podcast. Tell somebody who's like, yeah, I'm kind of getting tired of Joe. Like, I've been listening to this guy, but I'm looking for something else. Well, tell them I exist. I stream 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And if I can get the financial backing, and big thank you to my Patreons, big thank you to people who do support, but if I can get the financial backing, I'm going to push it to Monday and Friday as well. So please consider donating. God bless you. And I for sure could turn this into a cult, I think. I could wear like a bread hat, right? Have like a bread hat. And we could all. I get talking about spirituality all the time on this podcast because I think it's an important thing to talk about. I think it's important for us to actually acknowledge that we're randomly generated beings, sort of just living in the world, living underneath this idea that hey, we should probably care about one another, right? That my position is as simple as this: everybody deserves food and shelter. No exceptions, no excuses, no argument, no debate. If you are alive in the world, you deserve food, you deserve shelter. And if the system refuses to generate food and shelter for every single member of the populace, then the system should be replaced. You should replace the young Dundas Street preacher. Good luck. Those guys are hyper committed, dude. My father thinks that G.I. Jane was a stupid movie because the lead was a female character. For him, the military is a men world, and women don't deserve to be there. Yeah, dude. I don't. You know what my opinion is that the military probably shouldn't exist. All hail the bread and its spokesperson, John, says Grinning. Thank you for the donation, Grinning. I really do appreciate that, my man. A $2 donation is very kind of you, my man. Thank you so much. I know you donated earlier, so thank you so much for your donation, man. I appreciate it. Opinion on another coup from Tinker. Opinion on another coup in Africa, Gabon. We don't know enough about that one. That what's coming around is... and it's the reason why I'm not really talking about it today. I didn't really present it today because we don't know enough. All we really know is that the country has been led by the same family for a long period of time, like over 50 years, and that the military just couped them. Following the trajectory of what has been happening throughout Africa, it is possible that this is another attempt by popular forces, socialist forces, dare I say Marxist forces, to seize control of their own countries and attempt to chase away foreign influence, right? that Africa, like we here in the West talk about colonialism and the colonial mindset. Well, Africa is living colonialism. Like we are the beneficiaries of colonialism, and colonialism to us has been invisibilized, right? This narrative of like, well, I didn't go in and invade anybody, and I didn't do that. That's led into this argument of like, okay, but there are systems. There are systems that have persisted, right? And so we have to kind of convince large sections of the country that there are these existent systems that they don't really see because they're so large and assumed to exist that they don't really understand that they are systems. Well, it's not that way in Africa. In Africa, they're like, yeah, there's the French. They own us. We go to the mine out all of the stuff from the mine, and we give it to the French. So that's how that is in Africa. And so when we talk about colonialism, they are experiencing colonialism. It's very naked. It's very upfront. There's no bullshit there, right? And yeah. Opinion on increasing drone attacks in Russia from Ukraine or NATO territory? Yeah, expect that to continue. Like, that's no surprise. The strategy of the West has always been acts of terrorism, right? Like that's how it's always been. And that their primary major offensives have failed. They're not going to be able to push Russia out. Russia has now become entrenched in the Donbass region. The populaces of of Europe, Canada, and America are now war weary. We're no longer willing to send money. Like Biden went around trying to find some money for another Ukrainian offensive, and he couldn't get it. His primary opposition, Donald Trump, is outright explicitly saying we should end this thing. Trump's straight up saying, I would end this day one. I would go in there. It'd be the fastest. We'd make peace faster than anybody's ever made peace before. It'd be the fastest. It'd be so fast, fastest peace treaty you've ever seen. Right? Like this is how Trump is actually talking about this. And so, America has become war weary. They don't want to spend any more money on it. And so now it's just random acts of terrorism. That's basically what's left. And that will persist. Like America still wants to sell drones. America still the military industrial complex still wants to justify itself somehow. We are still basically just sitting here with a like, how is this going to resolve? Where is the resolution? How does this actually resolve itself so that it actually finishes up? And of course, the common sense, logical thing that all parties should absolutely do and should have done months ago would be to sit at a table and drop a peace agreement to agree that Russia has control of the Donbass. It's not going back. To agree to a generalized ceasefire and to a peace arrangement across the board. Right? That would be the rational, logical thing to do, but we're not ruled by rational people, right? We're ruled by these egregious psychopaths who are completely self-interested. And also, I think Western forces are very disincentivized, very, very, very disincentivized to actually foment peace in that region, because the longer the war goes on, the more they can tear Ukraine apart, which seems to be the goal. Right, it seems to be just the privatization of Ukraine, the destruction of any public service in Ukraine, and Ukraine may persist as a nation, like technically, but it's going to be owned by foreign powers across the board. So, and maybe after the ceasefire happens, these sort of drone attacks and all this kind of stuff will begin to stop, but. Don't hold your breath. Like that border is going to be a conflict border for a long time. Eric writes, good Lord, pro-Ukraine supporters are so delusional. I just had a guy telling me that they will visit Ukraine in September or October, since they will win the war by then. Yeah, that's a joke. Bread Cultist, good to see you, my man. will Zelensky still be a Churchill figure when Ukraine loses? Look, I've been saying it this whole time. When the Ukrainian war finally ends, like when this conflict finally ends on paper, and everybody draws up an agreement and says, okay, it's over, like we're not going to pursue anymore, all that kind of stuff. When that all finally settles down, the American people are going to be looking at Kim Kardashian's ass. Like the American people are going to be like taking a look at like Taylor Swift wearing a onesie, right? Like they're not going to give two shits. They're going to be like people like it'll come up on the news, and the people of the news will be like a generalized withdrawal from Ukraine, an agreement reached with Russia, and the American response will be like fucking Russians, and that's it. Like, that's it. And nobody will actually talk about Zelensky. Like, no, Zelensky will be a person non grata. They're not going to put Zelensky in front of us at all. He's not going to be on CNN. He's not going to be on Fox. He's not going to be in Time. He's not going to be anywhere. They're just not going to show him, right? That the story will be, today the administration created a peace deal with Russia in order to end conflict in Ukraine, right? And if anybody actually brings it up, they'll probably say something like, after a successful fight, the Russians didn't take Ukraine. That's what's the most important thing for everybody to remember and constantly think about, constantly 100% of the time. That we, the American people, fought against the Hitler-esque figure of Vladimir Putin, and Ukraine still stands. Ukraine still stands, right? And they'll just keep saying Ukraine still stands or some other dumb slogan over and over again until people are just like, yeah, Ukraine still stands. We won. Yeah, Putin got a little sliver. He got a little sliver of land, but we got Ukraine. Ukraine still stands. Yeah. And that's how most people will think about it, right? That's how most people will think about it. Like that Americans are not tuned in. Like Americans don't really know what's going on. They're not really tuned into what's going on. And so when we finally pull out of Ukraine, we'll declare victory, and most people will just believe it. And if you try to stand up and actually talk about the actual narrative of what's really happening in that region, what are you, a Ruski? If you like Russia so much, why don't you move there? Right? Jen Zedong had an article about a recently killed IDF soldier was also Ukrainian. I guess Ukraine wasn't fascist enough. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The other COPE narrative, good to see you, Leon. The other COPE narrative will be, we are saving our fighting capacity and weapons for China. That's right. The looming Chinese threat coming from Southeast Asia. We need to stop the spread of neo-communism. A bunch of Canadian volunteers have died in Ukraine. The propaganda is very strong. Hey, never forget, Tinker, that sometimes people just want to go places where they can legally murder other people. Don't forget that, right? That's essentially what our militaries are turning into, right? It's just like people who are basically like, oh, I get to go there and shoot someone and you'll give me a medal for it? Cool. Right? Like, really, when you stop and think about what a military actually is and the type of people, like, if your military was just a standing military force and military actions that your military took were like, shore up your border, right? You need to go here to shore up that border. Hey, there's a crisis happening in this city because there's a big power outage. You got to go there and you got to resolve that. Hey, there's a big internal rebellion happening, right? You got to go there and put order in there, right? And even that's a little shitty, but still, that makes sense for something that a military force would respond to, right? But this military, like NATO, the NATO military, the American military, if you're joining the American military, it's because you want to kill people. That black and white, full stop. You can talk about like, yeah, I joined the military because they were offering good benefits and they were going to give us a pension and train us to be, doctors, and we were going to get a good education and all that. All I had to do is drop some bombs on some people. Like, you're going over there to murder people. You know what you're doing. At this point, you have to be dim. Like, you gotta be dim-witted to really buy into this idea that you're fighting for freedom and spreading democracy and liberalizing and all this. Like, you gotta be like brain off. Yeah, we're going over there for the righteousness of the civilization. Yeah, we're doing the good. We're spreading goodness in the world. Like, you're going over there to kill people. That's the only reason that's left. And I think that we should be honest about it. If you're joining the military, it's not for justice, truth. It's not for the glory of America. It's not for your own prestige or your wealth, or it's not for any of that. It's so that you can legally kill a person and be rewarded for it. And I just don't think we should pretend like anything else is happening. Tinker writes, very true. I remember a lot of white Euros going to join Daesh, ISIS, just so they can torture other people. Yeah, that's the reason you joined the CIA now. Yeah, sadists from all over the world went there. Yeah. Like, I'm fairly serious. Like, I do worry that people think I am just being, like, dramatic or hyperbolic when I say these things. That, like, we are ruled by psychos. We are ruled by sadists and torturers and people who get off on the suffering of others. And I really do think that sometimes these wars happen just to have a bloodletting, and that's it. Content. Ukraine. I'm not a crane. Ukraine. Bread Cultist writes, John, don't you understand that it's okay to sign up to murder people half a world over if you're poor? Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, one of the most interesting statistics that I think exists in American culture right now is that there's been a generalized decline of serial killers. That there's been less serial killers as time has moved forward. And a reasonable response to this, I'm not against this response, is that, yeah, because we have more surveillance now. Right, we built a lot of institutions like the FBI, the CIA, right? And you've got a surveillance culture now where we have these devices listening in to us and observing us all the time, right? So it's easier to find these serial killers, and there's federal bodies who have departments in order to discover and find these serial killers, right? So that's one narrative, but Bread Cultist has hit the nail on the head. It's completely possible that they're just exporting them overseas, right? That they're recruiting them. That maybe they're finding them, but they're not finding them so that they can say, hey, we're watching you, don't kill anybody, haha, and then they don't. That they find who these people are so that they can train them and send them overseas. Yeah, it's sad that they think of themselves as patriots, though. Well, I mean, as long as you accept what your culture is, they are patriots, right? Like, if you accept that being a psychopathic murderer is a good thing, and that killing brown people who are poor and not your religion is a good thing, then you are a patriot. And if everybody around you tells you that you're a patriot for, murdering Muslims, then you are a patriot. Right? Like there is like a cultural element to this. It's not just that there are these individuals who are just like, I'm going to go kill people, right? It's that their fathers and their mothers and their sisters and their brothers and their preachers and their pastors and their rabbis and their teachers and their peers and their entrepreneurs are all just like, yeah, go overseas and murder people, spread liberal democracy, go kill those heretics. Let's launch this crusade. So says the President of the United States of America. Dude, when Bush said out loud on camera in front of the nation that they were going to launch a crusade, like, come on, man. Like, come on, dude. That's when anybody with any sense in their head at the time when he said that they were going to launch a crusade, I was still a fundamentalist Christian, and even I was like, bro, do not launch a crusade, my man. What are you doing? Bad call. Launching a crusade is a bad idea. Should not do that. That does not work out. Do not. Full stop. And how has that gone for us? How has that gone for us? Oh my God, man. What a dumb world we live in, you know? What a dumb world we live in. This absolutely ridiculous. Like, I don't know why it's so difficult for everybody to just kind of understand that we're all just sort of randomly generated. We're just here. That we create our own kind of local geographical cultures and religions and all of this. And that it's just not possible for there to be like a singular belief system or a singular identity or a singular idea that takes over the entire globe. It's just humans don't have the bandwidth capacity for that. It's just not possible, you know? And any attempt to create some kind of a system like that is destined to fail because it won't be able to respond rationally. There's no universal solution for the human experience, you know, that everybody should be permitted to kind of just make their own kind of thing. And as long as they've got their thing and they don't say this is the one true thing, like that to me has got to be the most bonkers thing. My guy is the one true guy. No other guy except my guy. This is the guy. Silverlight, the end result now isn't good for the people of the USA, though. Maybe it was back in World War II times, but not so for patriots in reality. I mean, the only reason why... There are two reasons, in my estimation, why the United States ends up in a good position post-World War II, which is that none of its infrastructure got blown up, right? Like, it didn't get bombed. There was no, like Europe got destroyed in World War II, right? England was rubble. France didn't get destroyed because they surrendered, so that they wouldn't be destroyed, but their manufacturing got destroyed, or it got co-opted by the Germans rather, and then Germany gets destroyed once the Soviets come on over, and the eastern bloc of Ukraine of Europe is just absolutely destroyed. So none of that happens in America. So of course they end up in a better position, right? But then on top of that, you have the New Deal, right? It wasn't like free market capitalism led to the prosperity of the American people post World War II. It was the New Deal. It was communists, socialists, labor unionists standing in front of the White House, holding communist sickles, saying we want a revolution, and the capitalists acquiescing. We should do it again. Some Ukrainian refugees are leaving Canada, going back home. They say Canada is hopeless. Yeah, Canada is hopeless. Like, Canada is hopeless. Like, here's an article that I've been looking at. It's going to take 3 minutes. Trudeau government has the land, money, and power to fix Canada's housing crisis. What are they waiting for? Ottawa's commitment of $82 billion to housing programs over the next decade is too little, too late, writes David Olive. So I'm going to put it on you guys right now. What do you think I'm going to say at the end of this article? The housing crisis can be resolved relatively soon once Ottawa shares the urgency of Canadians to get this most basic problem fixed. We have been here before. Ottawa built about 1 million low-cost victory houses after World War II and provided money and land again to help house waves of immigrants from the mid-1960s to the mid-1980s. As for private sector home builders, 50 years ago they were replacing single-family dwellings with multiplexes and low-rise apartment buildings with 12 to 16 units. But today, millions of Canadians are shut out of the housing market. What went wrong? The feds quit the housing field more than 2 decades ago, downloading that responsibility to the provinces. Free market capitalism. The housing crisis has its roots in the federal government's neglect of affordable housing over decades, write housing market professors Carolyn Wiseman and Alexandra Flynn in a report this month on needed actions by the feds. Meanwhile, private sector developers started replacing, and are still replacing, single-family dwellings with larger and pricier ones that provide no additional housing. There's your free market capitalism right there. And they have built luxury condos beyond the reach of everyday Canadians. They were abetted in that practice by municipal zoning and restricted construction of multiple family dwellings in many urban districts. And so, Canada now has fewer housing completions each year than it did in the early 1970s, when we had half the population. GTA neighborhoods now less populated. There are now GTA neighborhoods that are less populated than they were 2 generations ago. We don't need the Greenbelt for housing. Urban planners have identified swaths of residential neighborhoods in the GTA that are primed for higher population densities. These are districts with half-filled schools or underused parks and rec centers. For its part, Ottawa failed to match its ambitious targets for immigration with an equally robust project to adequately house newcomers. It did so knowing that the GTA and BC's Lower Mainland had endured spiraling shelter costs since the end of the Great Recession, and that the pandemic-era manic housing buying drove prices and rents even higher across the country. Experts now calculate that affordability for 4 million low-income Canadians is rent of less than $1,500 a month, and affordability for moderate and medium income households is rental or mortgage servicing costs of less than $2,520 a month. But the current average rent for 2-bedroom units is $3,918 in Vancouver and $3,370 in Toronto. That's a knock-on effect from soaring housing prices that have driven Canadians into the rental market. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation estimates that Canada will need an additional 3.5 million homes over and above the current rates of home building to restore the market to affordability by 2030. We need more than 600,000 additional houses a year to meet that target. But the current rate of new houses built is only 275,000 homes a year, and many of those new homes are not affordable dwellings. The Trudeau government says it's committing more than $82 billion to housing programs over 10 years, but $8.2 billion a year over a decade is too little and too slow to provide immediate solutions Canadians need. It equals a mere 3.3% of the value of Canada's existing housing stock, or $3.8 trillion. We need to roughly double Canada's current supply of housing for low-income Canadians alone to about 1.5 million units, though that would merely bring us in line with OECD and G7 averages. That deficiency in social housing afflicts the greatest hardships on Canadians. Canadians who qualify for social housing are currently living in shelter that is in disrepair, is overcrowded, multiple families living in the same apartment, or is dangerous. A resident is subject to partner abuse. Or it is too costly, absorbing far more in rental payments than the benchmark 30% of pre-tax income that defines housing affordability. The moral case to urgently build out Canada's anemic stock of social housing has never been stronger, Rebecca Young of Scotiabank Economics said in a report this year on the affordable housing crisis. In 2019, the Trudeau government made the right to housing the law of the land. It's time to make that law a reality. The payoff from the Trudeau government's laudable go-big approach on childcare, energy, and industry development is long-term, and the benefits can be intangible. By contrast, if Ottawa directed the CMHC to promptly finance billions of dollars worth of affordable housing, a role the CMHC has played before, the result would be financially tangible assets. That new housing stock would grow in value while providing significant relief from the housing crisis in the short term. As in past housing shortages, this crisis requires the feds to play the lead role. The feds have the lion's share of funds, land, tax incentive power, and moral suasion with provinces, municipalities, for-profit developers, and nonprofits to spur a national project of decent, affordable housing for all. So you guys know my position on this, right? Build more houses is a cover for the capitalists. Like, it's technically true. It's technically correct, right? No, we should be building more. Like, we should be. Like, I don't think we should not be building more. But what the capitalists have done is they have decided to focus the Sauron's eye of our attention onto the issue that they're willing to capitulate, right? They're willing to stand there and they're willing to say, capitalism is a complete and total failure because it failed to plan for the future, right? It didn't build enough housing. So capitalism is an utter collapsing failure because it doesn't actually account for things that are obviously happening in front of it, right? That's the failure that they're willing to acknowledge. And of course, they're going to try to scapegoat their political surrogates in order to deflect attention away from themselves, right? Trudeau is the problem. Fuck Trudeau. Oh, those liberals. We just need to get rid of those liberals. The government is the problem. Forget about who owns the government. Forget about who funds the government. Forget about who actually owns these politicians, right? Don't pay any attention to that, right? No, it's exclusively and only the government that is the problem. So the capitalists are willing to capitulate on this point, that we didn't build enough housing because capitalism is a failure. It doesn't work. It can't plan for the future. It doesn't care about its citizens. It doesn't care about the consequences of its actions. It's not thoughtful. It doesn't actually plan, and it just creates crisis for everybody, right? That's what they're willing to admit in front of you. They don't phrase it that way. I phrase it that way, but that's what they're willing to admit. So, there you go, there's their admission, which they use to cover the far more sinister side of it, which is, in the middle of this crisis, we're knowingly and willingly hoarding empty houses. That there are all of these empty properties that certainly exist, that we could literally just move people into today if it was mandated that it be done. But we're not going to do that. Because money me money me. And so what they're doing is they're willing to capitulate and admit their enormous, egregious failure on the one hand, in order to cover their much darker and more psychopathic failure that is obviously happening right in front of your face. We should strip these people of power. They should not have access to certainly the halls of power, but they should not have assets. They should not have businesses. They should not have shares. They should not be part of our society or our culture. That their power should be one vote, just like your mom, right? Yeah, Canada does not believe that housing is a human right. Dude, China basically prints houses now. These modular houses are badass, no excuses. Yeah, how to turn your landlord into a tent in 4 easy steps. But private developers will tuck someone into a shipping container for $1,800 a month and call it rustic, quaint, and cozy. I don't know. I don't think I would mind living in a shipping container. I don't need that much space. You know, I'm planning on getting a roommate in here, and I would actually have less room in here than I would have if I had a shipping container. Not for $1,800 a month, though. That's true. That's fair. Dude, I hope that this thing with this roommate works out. I hope that I get this roommate in here. I just the extra, it's just going to put oxygen in my lungs. That's what it's going to do. It's just going to put oxygen in my lungs, and it's just going to be like, and it's just going to be a stabilizing force. And he seems like he's a good kid. He doesn't seem like he's going to be a nut, right? Bent's reptiles. I just talked quite a bit about the Russian-Ukraine war, but I'll just give you the quick Coles notes because you're asking so politely, and I do appreciate that, my man. And I think this is your first comment here. The Russian-Ukraine war started in 2014 with the coup of the Ukrainian government, backed by NATO, fueled by neo-Nazi street gangs. They began a conflict in the Donbass region called the Donbass War. You can look it up on Wikipedia, where after the coup occurred, of course, Crimea and the ethnic Russians of the Donbass were like, oh shit, like things have gotten really serious. We need to foment a separatist movement, and they did. For about 8 years, the Donbass conflict carried on until finally, and during that period of time, Putin was attempting to negotiate some kind of ceasefire, some kind of peace deal. And once it became obvious that that wasn't going to be the case, he invaded. And since then, Putin has basically accomplished all of his goals. He has essentially taken all of the territory that he declared that he was going to take. The denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine is nebulous. Like that's a never end. That's like a war on terror sort of statement. Like when do you think that that's over? And we have seen Russia destroy the Ukrainian military. We have seen Russia destroy NATO forces in the region. All of the equipment and all of the counterinsurgency and all the counterattacks and all this kind of stuff have failed. Russia has that territory now. It's Russian territory. And it is only a matter of time until the Americans eventually just shrug and say, okay, it's over. And then they sign a deal, and then the borders will be redrawn. That's what's going on. And what I didn't talk about today was what this war actually means in geopolitics. Geopolitically, this war has been a disaster for the West. It has lost the entire rest of the world. It has made the entire rest of the world lose respect for America and for the West. That the West no longer has credibility on the world stage any longer, and is no longer seen as serious outside of the violence that it can inflict. Which is why you're seeing rising coups throughout Africa. You're seeing rising military action throughout the Middle East and Africa that are explicitly saying we are casting off the shackles of colonialism. You are seeing rising federation movements and rising communist and socialist movements throughout Latin America. You are seeing a resurgence of force against the American empire in a way that you have not seen in a long, long time. And it is because what's called the Global South understands that it cannot trust America, that America is a fraudulent system. The people, the institutions within it are fraudulent, and that America needs to, that we, as the people of these nations, need to look to alternative systems and begin isolating the West. Because the West has gone full crazy and is doing stupid things. Like stupid things. That there is no position that you can genuinely argue from to justify the Ukrainian war. It's a senseless war that doesn't make any sense at all from any position whatsoever. That the Americans clearly did it so that they could spend money on their military, and that's the extent of it. That literally you've got like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, basically saying we want more money, and the American system finding a way to funnel money away from the citizens into the pockets of the military-industrial complex on the fraudulent false pretense that Putin is the next Hitler and he's trying to reinstate the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, we're the ones that funded the coup. We're the ones that poked the bear. William Burns, former ambassador to Russia, current head of the CIA, literally said so in 2009. Like, this was well known. This was information that we had, and we just did it. And why did we do it? So that a couple of guys could make $1 billion from you. And places like China, India, Russia, certainly, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Brazil, Chile, Nicaragua, they're all looking at this going, oh shit, we gotta get away from these psychos. These guys have gone total psycho. Like they're not thinking rationally at all. What if we care about increasing the quality of life for our own citizens and improving the quality of our life for our own citizens, we need to all collectively acknowledge that America is a dangerous force that we need to organize and ally against, which is why you have an organization like BRICS now. Right? The BRICS organization, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative, exists in order to isolate the West. And it's exactly what's happening. And our response to it is basically to just piss away a ton of money on a pointless war that we lost. It also makes Putin a very interesting figure. Like, Putin's hope was that Russia was going to be integrated with the West. That's how he began his tenure. He was put into power in order to sort of complete the merger with Russia into the Western system. And it's under Putin that he steadily realizes, as well as the Russian citizens steadily realize, that they will never, ever, ever be integrated into the system. And so he's a very fascinating figure for that reason. Generation Y Me says, speaking of stupid things Westerners do, the French ambassador in Niger just refused to leave like he was told and hiding out. Yeah, like, think of your family, man. Yeah. I mean, maybe he just doesn't have anywhere to go. Baked Potato, Western imperialism is coming to an end. The world no longer tolerates this rules-based order BS. I don't know about coming to an end, but it's certainly no longer unopposed. I think that's the big thing. Like, let's not fool ourselves, right? Let's be realists about this. Let's listen to John Mearsheimer, right? It's not like America is just going to go boo and like depower. It's not going to be like a robot being like, imperialism defeated, boo, right? It's going to fight. It's going to fight, and it's going to do a lot of dumb shit. Georgina, don't know if I've ever seen you here before, Georgina. Good to see you. The Libs polling numbers are tanking fast, it seems. Do you think an election will be called soon? No. I think that the Liberals will cling on to power, and the NDP are in the same boat that the Liberals are in. Recent polling shows that the NDP have also dropped in their support. Like, people are pissed off. This next election is going to be based exclusively on fury. And I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse. I think that people are going to vote in the Conservatives, and pretty shortly thereafter are going to realize how dumb an idea that actually ended up being. But I think that people are furious. I think that they want somewhere to put their fury, and the system of capital has designed a system to allow their surrogates, i.e. the politicians they bribe in order to take power, to stay in power. Right, so the populace gets furious at the political surrogates of capital. They all vote for the other political surrogate of capital, the blue team, right? We're like, yeah, get rid of red team. Red team sucks. Fuck red team, and they all vote blue team, and then blue team acts the same way or worse, right? And then eventually people go, blue team, what a God, terrible. Blue team, so awful. Red team, everybody vote red team. And then we all swing over to red team. And then red team acts the same or worse. And then we all go, red team sucks. Oh, they're so terrible. F red team. Oh, they're so terrible. Blue team will be better. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth it goes. And the winner is capital. because we just keep voting for capitalists. Like, Einstein said it best. The definition of insanity is repeating the same thing and expecting a different result. Stop supporting capitalists. Stop voting for capitalists. At this point in the game, vote for the guy with the boot on his head. Vote for the person who you don't really recognize. Just vote for lunatics. You're going to be better off. Vote for people who you go and they say things like, oh, I'll abolish money. Great, vote for that guy, right? Like, chances are good he won't get in, but I bet the system of capital will start responding. I bet the system of capital will be like, oh shit, people are starting to literally vote for lunatics. People are starting to vote for the guy who says, I'm going to hang all the fossil fuel executives. Vote for that guy, right? Stop voting for conservatives, liberals, NDP, Green. Stop voting for corporate power. Stop voting for corporate parties. Start voting for people, start voting for your mom. Start voting for Kathy down the street. Start voting for just a person who is like, I don't really like what's going on out here, and I don't really understand what's happening, but boy howdy, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out for you. Vote for that person. Because, and this is if you care about electoral politics. I'm not even trying to pitch at you what I think should really happen. But if you care about electoral politics, stop voting for landlords. Stop voting for people who take corporate money. Stop voting for capitalists. Stop voting for people who are like, yeah, the system of capital is really working for me. Stop. Vote for anyone else. Literally anyone else. Go into the voting booth and look at the names on the list and pick the name you like that isn't conservative, liberal, NDP, or Green, and put the X beside that person. And if at this stage in the game, voter turnout is so far down. Here in the province of Ontario, it's the lowest voter turnout in the history of the nation this last election. That means that if all of these people who don't go and vote just showed up and voted for random people who they don't know, that would scare the shit out of the system of capital more than you can possibly imagine. That would scare the shit out of the system of capital more than you could possibly imagine. Because can you imagine if one of these people got in? Just the damage that they could actually do. And that would just be from them just being like, well, wait a minute, we got a bunch of homeless people here and we got a bunch of empty houses. Can't we put the homeless people in the empty houses? Because here's the thing, is that any reasonable, rational, non-psychopathic person, which is 98% of the public, not the owners of the society, right, would be like, hold on, wait a minute. We got these homeless people here. We got all these empty houses. Put the homeless people in the empty houses. And if they had any balls on them at all, when anybody stood up and said, well, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z, they would just look at them and be like, too bad. Do it. And that'd be the end of that conversation. One of the things that I've been saying a lot, that we need to start saying more and be ready to say more, is tough shit. Too bad. Put the people in the houses. Give those people food. I don't care about your profits. Shut up. But we're too cowardly as a people. We keep voting for corporate power. We keep voting for capitalists. We keep voting for landlords. And then we scratch our head wondering why the country is going to shit. So expect this conservative tenure to be just as bad as these liberals. They'll build 0.2% more housing, right? Timothy writes, at one point, a member of the Rhino Party in Nova Scotia actually won a seat in the local government, and he did a good job. Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to do a good job, comparatively, right? An empty paper bag with a smiley face drawn on it would be doing as good a job, at least, as Justin Trudeau, right? Like the bar is essentially do nothing, right? So when the bar is basically do nothing, then if somebody comes in and has one good idea and does one thing right once, then they're a better politician than literally all the politicians we've had in the last 10, 30 years, right? Like, like elect and regret, the true Western model. Yeah, because we're not actually thinking. We're not actually thinking, right? We really do move forward with this free market capitalist idea. We really do move forward with this idea of just like the free market will decide. We don't need to plan or think or contemplate or be thoughtful, right? We don't need to do any of that. We don't need to understand systems or how the model works or how our own electoral system works. We don't need to understand any of that, right? Like, we don't need to understand anything. The free market will decide. And so what does that make? What's the result of that? Well, everybody's just running on hysteria, right? Everybody's just running on emotions 100% of the time because we literally have ingrained the idea that thinking is bad, that planning is wrong, that we shouldn't actually come up with ideas or thoughts, that vision and foresight are incorrect. Right, that's authoritarian. That leads to if you have foresight and vision and thought, then that'll lead to gulags. Right, like this is actually how people think. Right, this is actually how the society works, and so all we ever do is get pissed off. Fuck Trudeau! Fuck Trudeau! Oh, we gotta get out Trudeau! Oh, anything to get Trudeau out of there. I'm just sick and tired of this Trudeau guy. Let's get this Trudeau down. Let's get it all. Oh, this big newspaper and this big organization and the big corporate power structure and all of my enemies are saying that this guy's gonna beat this guy and I hate this guy, so this guy's my good man and good. And then that guy gets in, and then the cycle repeats. And because we don't think, and we certainly don't have a memory, right? We don't actually go like, oh, wait, the same thing happened last election. Hey, this exact same thing happened last time. And it happened the time before that, and 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 the time before that. We don't remember that. That's off the table, right? So we have no memory, and we don't plan. And so everything is just reactionary. That's why these people are called reactionaries. And when you're a reactionary, you're easy to manipulate. It's easy to manipulate reactionaries. It's easy to manipulate people who can only respond to stimuli and have completely internalized the idea that planning is bad. I don't think I'm going to do the rapid fire, honestly. I think I'm just going to wrap this up. I'm over time. I hope you guys had a good time. Thank you all for being here. Bless each and every one of you. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles, donate to my Patreon, tell people I exist, and always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.